Oh, well, there you go.
Thank
Perfect.
you. Okay.
You got it. You got this. I got a bug flying around.
Okay. Okay. Good afternoon. It is Friday, May 29th. All three commissioners are in the commissioners meeting room with Monica Reeves doing our deputy clerk duties today. We have Zach Wesley from the PA's office with us, and right now we do have an action item. And we have a public hearing to consider a request by Canyon County for an ordinance amending county code pertaining to private tower with antenna, excuse me, and that is case OR 2020-0002. Zach, looks like this is a WebEx meeting. Is there anybody that is on the line or anybody that's wishing county to be recognized and amending county? Okay. Thank you.
Madam Chair, this is a project that Development Services Department has been working on for a little while. Kate Dahl from DSD really spearheaded it. You may recall that a little bit ago, we had an application for a ham radio tower that came in and had to go through our regular cell phone tower sort of ordinances because that's the only thing we had that fit. So Kate's been working with that ham radio advocacy group or club to come up with an ordinance change that would fit, that would allow those ham radio antennas in to the county without going through that whole process. And I think that was the...
Yeah, and if I remember, that's been at least 3 years ago. It was right shortly after you came on that this came to our attention. And
I have it.
And I've had several conversations.
Yeah.
Okay, who's that?
Kate.
Huh?
Kate.
Hi, Kate. Good.
This
But
is
anyway,
Kate.
it's been going on for a long time, so I'm glad to see this come forward here. Yeah.
Okay. Zach Wesley is right now talking to us about this, and so you guys, you'll let her know that.
Okay, so I will. I'll just step through the ordinance. Kate, we've already sort of had a setup of why we're here, and I'll just walk through the ordinance, and then we can turn it over to Kate for testimony. So first, we've adopted, or the proposal is to adopt a new definition for private tower with antenna. And so the definition is adopted will specify that this is for amateur radio and not for commercial use. We then go to Article 2, Chapter 3, that, let me find my page here, excuse me. That will amend, will change the setbacks, the minimum parcel size and lot size and height regulations in Table 3. So that's on page 23 if you have. I don't have an extra one. It's available digitally, and I can share mine with you if you'd like.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you.
There really are pretty minor changes here.
Okay.
It's a big ordinance, so you have to sort of go through to look for the underlines. But basically, we've added an exception to the requirements for setbacks for private towers with antennas, and they'd be allowed up to 100 feet in all zones. And then we've got a change to the zoning classification that will add private towers with antennas in, and that specifies that the private antennas will be an allowed use in all zones except for in the R1 and R2 classifications, and in which case it's a director's decision on whether or not the tower can go in. So I think that that is a pretty good summary of what these changes are. So we've got a new definition for amateur radio. We've got relief from the setback requirements, and then we're putting it in as or the proposal is to put it in as an allowed use, except in the residential zones, which requires a director's decision. So with that, I'll turn it over to Kate.
Can I ask a question in between that, Madam Chair? So I don't know a lot about maybe the answer, but historically, haven't they been allowed to ask the homeowner's permission to build those towers and then put them on property like that?
I think that's the cell phone towers.
Okay, so this is it.
This is different. These are amateur, smaller towers that are just for ham radio communication, primarily.
Okay.
So they are not, there's no commercial use for these. Commercial use would have to go under our existing cell phone tower ordinance.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you for the clarification.
And the problem that arose is that there was no definition for these people who want to put up a ham radio. They had to adhere to the commercial tower definition, which was just onerous for a small guy that wants to put up a ham radio.
Right, would have required a conditional use permit and the whole hearing process. Kate, is there anything else?
No, thank you. I think you did a great job. Yeah, just to summarize, I mean, the basic difference is now, before they had to go spend the $850, go through the 4-month long hearing process to get the conditional use permit and through the building permit process. So basically, this ordinance eliminates them from having to go through the conditional use permit process. So all they have to do is go through the building permit process, which, you know, depending on what our workload is less than a month, and the cost is typically a lot less than the. So I worked with the American Radio Relay Association on this, and they were fantastic to work with. They were very accommodating, really helped me understand what their needs were. People feel very, very good about this ordinance moving forward that protects the safety of the citizens as well as it's restricted for the radio operators.
You're kind of cutting in and out on us, Kate.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I have a question for you, Kate or Zach, either one. So on these, and I apologize, I don't know more about it, but is it the use or the size or both? So compare maybe the size of the towers in terms of space that you're talking about, or the use on that?
So typically, it's my understanding.
We're kind of losing you.
We're losing you, Kate.
This is Tricia. I can chime in if it helps.
Yeah, Kate got frozen out for some reason.
Yeah, I noticed that too.
Whereas the commercial towers are much higher.
Okay.
Trish, can you summarize that?
Hey, Kate,
Yes.
I'm going to talk because you're cutting out too much.
Oh,
Hopefully you can hear me, but we're having a hard time. It's kind of freezing up, I guess. So, so I'll take a stab. So, Madam Chair, Commissioner Van Beek, the ordinance sets kind of a sliding scale for the higher the tower is, the more impact it would have, say, in a residential neighborhood. So Kate worked closely with the stakeholder organization to kind of define those breaks in height of where more review was probably needed, and in the context of the ag zone versus a residential zone. So it's not so much the use. The use is really just a structure, typically sometimes just an antenna, or a very small tower. So we did try to construct the ordinance so it's a combination of setbacks and in association to the relative height of the tower.
Okay, thanks, Trish.
Just a lot of geometry. So,
Yeah.
Madam Chair, if I could just add, I think Kate included the P&Z minutes. We did have representatives come testify at P&Z that they were very supportive of the ordinance and they really appreciated. And I've had follow-up emails. I've had emails thanking the county and particularly Kate for engaging them in constructing the ordinance.
Thank you. Zach, did you have something?
So I was going to say is the section that I did not really go into detail on, which is Section 8, and has more details on sort of what the requirements are and how it's determined what would be a private tower with antenna versus a cell phone tower. And I will, that's Section 8 in the ordinance, and I'll pass that along so you can read it. It's got a number of criteria metrics.
This is public hearing, right?
That is.
Okay. There it is. Public hearing, and there is, are you people for the towers,
No.
antennas? Okay, thank you very much. So there is nobody, let me make sure, is there anybody online that this is a public hearing? Anybody online that wishes to speak or anybody that is WebEx in?
Madam Chair, seeing that everybody who's on the WebEx are staff, nobody else has checked in, I'm going to make a motion, we close public comment.
Moved and seconded to close public comments. All in favor?
All right.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Commissioner Van Beek?
say that on here, I appreciate Zach providing this on the Section 8. It does appear that it provides a lot of support for Trish's comments, that there's a lot of geometry involved in here just with how it's designed. So Kate, thank you, and Trish, thanks for always highlighting the good work that your staff does in putting this together. And I don't have a problem with this. I think it's a good move.
Madam Chair, I want to, this has been a long process. The first time it came to my attention, it was at least 3 years ago when I got a call from a ham radio operator who wanted to put up a new antenna, found out that he had to adhere to the same requirements as putting up a cell phone or a cell tower. And it didn't seem right until I brought this attention to this issue to Tricia. And Tricia took it to heart, and Kate jumped right in. And man, I appreciate the working with the ham radio operators organization and the club and everything else there. And I think the result has been a very good collaborative effort that will benefit all of those folks out there who are ham radio operators or those who wish to become that. And I just also say that ham radio is still a very integral part of the communication system in the United States should anything disastrous happen to regular radio and telephone communications. The ham people pick that up, and so they're a very important part of what we do in the United States, and very appreciative of this effort. And I'll make the motion that we we authorize the board to sign the ordinance amending county code to private tower with antennas, case number OR 2020-0002.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the ordinance. All in favor? Aye. Okay. Thank you, Trish and Kate, very much. We have all the paperwork down here, so we'll get it all signed.
Does that include the summary also?
It does.
Okay.
Summary of ordinance.
Okay, great.
Perfect.
Yep.
Yeah, and my motion implied that,
Right.
although it might not have been heard.
Got it. Okay. We'll just start signing. Oh, yes, that would conclude this meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kate.
you appreciate.
Okay, I will do it. I will do it. I'll do it right here.
I'll do that.
Oh, perfect, that was one of my questions. I was just wondering if you had a chance to do
Jen, there's citations and fines issued on that one that I was referenced. I will call, yeah.
Okay. I only asked because you were gonna ask us work.
Yeah.
Pushing
This
up
is
on
the
the
elections
deadline.
advance, right?
Janet.
Oh, perfect, thank you.
This is the elections advance, right?
Oh, that's a problem. Yeah. I could get my computer to do what I wanted it to do. That would be super helpful. Okay. Yeah, we only have just the fair meeting probably from 9 to 10 that morning. Let's try. Oh. It's because
Yeah, I don't know how to look it up, Pam. Mine is about to try something else that didn't work.
What does this do?
This gives you that vision.
Oh.
Got some glitch, unfortunately.
We have problems with the recording? Okay,
Because it's Friday afternoon.
Yeah.
yeah.
Might just let folks who are on the phone.
If you have called in for WebEx or you are on the phone, please bear with us. We are having an issue with the recorder that's here in the commissioners' meeting room.
For whatever reason, it's going to record from Jennings' computer.
Okay,
So we'll just get this going.
so you can unmute and do everything?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So we're good to go? Okay. Good afternoon. It's Friday, May 29th. Commissioner Van Beek, Commissioner White, and Commissioner Dale. All three commissioners are present in the commissioners' meeting room. Monica Reeves is here doing our deputy clerk recording for us. Zach Wesley from the prosecuting attorney's office is here with us at the desk as well. We are here for a public hearing, and that is to consider the request for, it was an appeal for Dan Woodruff, but for a decision by the Planning and Zoning Commission regarding the approval of the excavation, but this is the
This is a
reconsideration.
request for reconsideration.
This is, yeah, the reconsideration of that denial of that, I mean, the approval of that request, the decision. So Zach Wesley, you are going to give them the straightforward.
You want me to do that now?
I would love it if you would do
Okay.
that right now.
So, Madam Chair, we are in a sort of a situation that we don't normally find ourselves in during one of these hearings. So I can just go through the history here on how we got here. The applicant, Granite Excavation Incorporated, applied for a conditional use permit. That was approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission and appealed to the county commissioners by Dan Woodruff. We had a number of hearings on that appeal, and ultimately the board made a determination that they were going to grant the appeal and deny the request for conditional use permit from Granite Excavation. We were scheduled to sign those findings and conclusions of law on April 20th of this year. And on April 16th, the board received a request from the applicant and their attorney to reopen the record. So not a request for reconsideration because there was no final decision issued in writing, but to reopen the record to present their new application proposal. And so that's how I would present it as this is a hearing to hear their revised proposal for their conditional use permit. Because we've reopened the record, the record that we have is the hearings that we've had are still part of your decision-making process. Everything you've heard, every exhibit that's been entered is still part of your decision-making process. And the only thing that's been vacated is your final determination that you made previously. So this hearing should have a limited scope. The applicant, Granite Excavation, is intending to present a new proposal, and then this hearing will be limited to comment on the new proposal.
Okay, so that any previous hearings we had before and those that publicly spoke and gave, against or for, that sort of a thing, that's already on the record and we're not going to repeat that. This is what we're talking about today. Right. Hearing only.
Yeah, we are still in those original proceedings. This is still part of that original record. It's just a reopening. And that's a little different than what we've maybe done in the past, where an applicant may submit a new proposal and go through the process again, in which case it's a clean record and all that evidence needs to be re-entered again. This is the same record.
Okay.
And if I could, I'm just a little bit confused because this is different than anything we've done. Normally, if somebody asks for reconsideration, then we either say yes or no, we're going to reconsider, and normally we say no, we're not going to reconsider because nothing has changed. And in other cases where an application has been denied, the applicant has come back with a brand new proposal with radical changes and everything, but have gone back through the process so that we see a new plan. In this case, that's not the case.
Right.
And so I guess my question is, and I understand we're going to go through this process, that's what we're here for today, but I guess maybe I can ask Tricia to weigh in from DSD side. I see her name up there, but her place is vacant. Oh, there she comes back. I guess I'd like to find out why we're doing this rather than just require them to start the application process over again like we've done in every other case.
Right. And so I think I could probably answer that, Commissioner Dell, Madam Chair. So normally, the way this process goes is you have a final written decision, and then you have your request for reconsideration. And then in that final decision, written decision, The law also requires the board to tell an applicant how they can obtain approval. And so that's normally how we get to a new application and a second hearing. They'll take that direction the board has issued and reapply. In this case, because we never got to that final written decision phase, they used part of the county's ordinance that is probably the first time we've had a request like this in my knowledge. But we've got a portion of our ordinance that allows the board to grant a request to reopen a record at any time in the proceedings prior to a final written decision being completed.
Kind of slipped it in on.
We got in there right before the board issued a final written decision, so
That's why we're here today.
This is sort of a result of COVID-19 to some degree. Is that not correct?
That is correct. I think because of the COVID-19 situation, the findings and conclusions got delayed.
Yes.
Because they were scheduled to be, I think, signed that first.
And it was during the stay-at-home order.
Right, stay-at-home order.
Yes.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
I thank you, I appreciate that, I do understand that.
Okay.
And I do appreciate Commissioner Dale bringing that up. In the minutes from the Board of County Commissioners meeting, it was stated clearly on the record that a new application would need to be considered. Those were comments made by Commissioner Dale. So I appreciate also the fact that the chair has pointed out this is a result of the stay-at-home order. And in that, I think it would have been better to have a clean record. I did not vote in favor of not doing what we said we would do. There are caveats being granted for different things because of the situation that we're in. And so I find the extenuating circumstances not going to stick to that in its entirety because it's their extenuating circumstances. And we've done everything. Extenuations or extensions, whatever that word is I'm looking for. So I was not in favor of doing this. I want that on the record that I think it would have been much cleaner and a better process had we done what we said we were going to do at the board level because the applicant put money out. We have that appeal of the planning and zoning decision on there, and so I want that on the record, I guess, at the beginning that this is unusual, and it wasn't the time I would have chosen to set a precedent.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
I would only say that I don't think any of us would have chosen this virus and the way life has unfolded for us in the last 3 months. I hope we don't ever have to go there again, but we will be better prepared when we do. So.
And I just add, Madam Chair, for the record, that this hearing was fully renoticed according to the requirements in the Local Land Use Act and Planning Act. And in addition to that, those notice requirements, the staff has had the information sent back out to the people that were involved in the hearing previously, and the planner, Mr. Lister, can talk to you more about that.
Madam Chair, Zach, if I could clarify just because in response to what I just heard down here, this is not something we had a choice whether or not to do or not to do. Nobody on this board said, well, let's have another hearing. It was the applicant or the Granite folks who utilized a portion of our ordinance that already is in existence to cause this to happen today. Is that my understanding?
Yes and no. The applicant used a process that's in our ordinance, but on April 20th, we also had an agenda item to consider reopening the hearing, and the majority of the board voted in favor of reopening the hearing on April 20th.
Okay, that's a while back. Okay. All right.
Okay. Okay. Now, thank you, Zach, very much. Before we get this started, I need for everybody that is on the WebEx that wishes to speak to this hearing only. We're not repeating all the information that we've had before. But if you are wishing to speak, I need your name and I need to know if you are for this, against this, and if you want to speak. So, let's see, who do we have? Dusty Hibbert, are you on?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I'm available to speak, but just on behalf of Granite for any questions that arise.
Okay, so we're going to swear you in case that it becomes time, okay? So we're not going to do that right now. We're going to do everybody. Josh Davis, are you on the phone?
Yes, I am.
You wish to speak?
I will present as part of the application.
You are going to be presenting.
Yes.
Okay, so you are the applicant. That's very good. Okay. And next is Josh Leonard.
Yes. Can you
You
hear
are
me?
going to speak?
Yes, I am. I'm going to speak in favor of the application, against the appeal. And I'm the attorney that took advantage of this tiny little bit of often unused or rarely used code. So.
You don't want to say anything?
Let me see where we're going from here. Alexis Baker?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, Alexis, are you for or against, and do you wish to speak?
I'm against. I am the environmental specialist for Upper Snake River Tribes Foundation. I'm in position. I am not going to testify.
And you are going to testify, I'm sorry?
I am not.
Okay, thank you very much. Alexis Malcolm?
You know they're going to say you just want to.
I'm against, and I will not be testifying.
Okay. So both of my Alexis. Okay, let's see. There's a call-in user. The first numbers in the phone number are 208-954. Your name and are you for, against, and do you want to testify, please?
We're going to have to say we're against.
The first numbers in your phone number are 208-954.
It's not you.
No. But we're going to have to say.
Are you there?
Are you going to speak up?
No, you are.
No, I'm not.
You're not going to speak? Okay. 208-954, we're moving on. 208-250. First numbers in the phone. 208-250. Are you there?
This is Michaela. Yes, this is Michaela Jones. I'm a resident of Maproona.
And are you for? Are you for or against?
I'm against.
Okay. And do you wish to speak, Michaela?
I provided written comments that Dan has on record, so no testimony.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Call-in user 208-495.
Probably Gibbons.
208-495. First numbers of your phone number. Are you there? Okay.
That would be mine, I think. I'm not sure if I'm on the phone or on this other web.
You're on.
That's Travis.
Travis Mitchell.
You're on the WebEx. You are in the. I need your name and if you're for or against, or if you're going to speak, please.
Well, my name is Travis Mitchell. I think I'd like to make a brief statement.
For or against?
Against.
Okay. Travis, thank you.
It's going to be this easy.
208, and that's 495, Monica. Okay. Carolyn Smith.
I think we just lay low.
Well, it has our name on it.
Carolyn Smith. Harold Neville. Are you there? Harold?
Harold Neville doesn't have a microphone. I wonder if he has not activated his audio. So we're not able to hear him if he would.
Harold Neville, will you shake your head yes if you can hear me? Okay. He doesn't, yeah. We need you to activate a microphone. You've got to get some sound. So we'll move on. We'll move on. Kim Woodruff, are you there?
Go ahead.
Kim Woodruff.
Yes.
Kim, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Kim? Okay, are you for, against, and do you want to speak?
Against, and I do not want to speak.
Okay, very good. Next, we have Nathaniel Steele.
Yes, I'm here.
Nathaniel? Okay. For or against, and do you want to speak?
I am neutral, and no, I do not want to speak.
Okay. Scott Hauser. Scott, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
For or
Opposed.
against, and do you want, are you for this, against, or do you want to speak?
I am opposed, and I do not wish to speak. I'm
Okay,
the
very
executive
good.
director of the Upper Smith River Tribes, and we submitted a letter in opposition.
Okay, very good. We have that. Heidi Brave.
Yes, ma'am.
Heidi? Okay,
I'm
are you
against.
for? Okay,
Do not want to provide testimony. We provided written documentation.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have a call-in user, and the first numbers are 208-397. If that's your phone number, I need your name.
Well, good afternoon. Yes, my name's Lee Juan Tyler, 8618. Is that the 397-8618? Is that the right number?
Okay, are you going to, do you wish to speak, and are you for or against?
Yes, I wish to speak, and I am against.
Okay, and your first name again?
Lee Juan, Lee space capital Juan.
Okay, very good. Got it. Thank you. Phone caller again. First numbers are 208-914. 208-914. Are you there? Hello? Is your phone number 208-914?
Yeah, which is on.
Hello? Yes or no? Okay, we're moving on. Edward Owens. Edward Owens.
I'm here.
Can you hear me? Okay, are you for, against, and do you wish to speak?
I'm neutral and I do not wish to speak. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Travis. We got Travis Mitchell. I think you've got Travis.
Yeah, you got me.
I've already got you. Okay. Steve Gibbons.
Yes, I'm here.
Are you for or against, and do you wish to speak?
I'm against it, and I've written a letter.
Okay, we have it. Thank you very much. And there's Harold again. Harold, are you on now? Harold Neville. Okay, and Michaela Jones, I think we have you too.
Yes, you do.
Okay, and you don't wish to speak. Okay, that takes care of. Is there anybody on the WebEx or the phone that I missed? Please identify yourself at this time. Very good. Okay. Monica will swear all of you that gave me, all of you that are going to speak, and I have your names down. She's got your names, and she's going to swear you in with our staff at this time.
Tricia Nilsson.
Oh, do we
I
have?
got 'em.
Oh, okay.
Tricia Nilsson, Dan Lister, Rob Bearden, Nikki Schwen, Dusty Hibbard, Josh Davis, Joshua Leonard, Travis Mitchell, Lee Juan Tyler, I believe that's it. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
I do.
I do.
Yes.
Very good. Thank you. Okay. At this time, the chair recognizes Zach Wesley.
Madam Chair, just for our record and the people that are online, I noted that there were a number of telephone numbers or names that weren't responsive to the chair when you called on them. I would just note that if anyone's having technical difficulties, there's alternative methods to get into the hearing on the county's website. There's a 1-800 number there, 1-844-992-4726, and that's session number 126-644-1216. They can also get a YouTube link to the presentation from the county's website. And if there are anyone who can't access through WebEx that number, they can call the Board of County Commissioners' regular telephone number, and someone can help them.
Give that number.
Monica, do you know that number?
The WebEx?
The regular board's number?
208-454-7507. 208-454-7507.
Okay. Thank you, Zach, very much. Okay, at this time, we're ready to begin with staff. So.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is Dan Lister, Planner 2 for Development Services. As Zach said, this is to review the reconsideration request by Clark Wardle, who is representing Granite Excavation Incorporated. Staff is not going to go and rehash the original record. We're just going to talk about this reconsideration request, as Zach mentioned. So the alternative proposal that was provided to the board prior to deciding to reconsider, it included 3 new alternatives. One is the duration of the pit. So just to go back a little bit, what was requested before is a 30-year duration to do riprap excavation on approximately 45 acres along the talus slopes, mineral extraction 135 acres for sand and gravel extraction up to a depth of 30 feet, and this would all have portable crushers and the full 9 yards for the operation. So in this case, the duration being requested now is only 5 years. On top of it would be the riprap mining would be no longer requested. So this is with that 45 acres along the talus slope. So this would no longer be part of the application. And the disturbance of the sand and gravel pit would be only 40 acres instead of the 135 acres that was originally requested. In the letter in the reconsideration letter, the applicant states there's many benefits to this. One of them would be that this would provide mineral extraction for the Idaho Power Rippey Island Restoration Project. As shown here, here's a draft plan of that was provided in the staff report. It shows that the Rippey Island Restoration Project would be able to utilize this land for their project. If you can see here, this is also part of your report. It shows the proposed, this is just a draft, but this shows the proposed type of gravel that would be utilized for this operation. If you see right in the middle, it says about 43,000 cubic yards would be imported for this purpose. That's a lot of truck trips right there. I was looking at the trucks available for this type of operation. The smallest one would do 1 to 3 cubic yards a load, and the largest is about 30 cubic yards. So it could be a lot of truck trips. So the applicant is stating that this would definitely be a great site for that restoration, where it would have 0 truck trips because the resource would be right there. Also, they're stating that no effects to the talus slopes. That was some concern during their previous hearing. So that operation and the truck trips that were generated from that are no longer part of the application. So that is a benefit. They also state that the alternative would have a zero effect to cultural resources. They would not impact archaeological resources. This also has the potential to create jobs, and they believe that the conditions of approval that were originally slated by the Planning and Zoning Commission or recommended by the Commission or approved by the Commission, which included limiting truck trips and phasing of the pit, would still be beneficial to this and can be used, and that the reduction would also minimize the visual impacts that the use would have. So just to go through this, staff only had that letter to work with, so there was no revised site plan, no new reclamation plan, no new narrative, no new report. So staff is only basing the analysis on those 3 items that were provided as part of the alternative. So going to the staff report, summarizing the potential impacts, one of them is still the negative impact to the surrounding character. As stated in the previous hearings, there's the scenic byway, historical resources, cultural resources, natural resources, and just the type of surroundings around there that, low amount of noise and traffic through that area. And so there's still a belief that this has the potential to impact that area in that sense. Traffic, as stated in the letter, this use will only generate about 10 truck trips for that site. That's what the letter is stating. But staff believes even Highway District and ITD did not find this to be an impact, and that the conditions of approval that were drafted could be used to reduce and mitigate said traffic. So if the board wishes to move forward with the reconsideration, there would be some conditions that we could apply to reduce the truck traffic as to restricting possibly driving routes an hour. As stated in the staff report, the letter from the applicant believes that this would have a zero effect on archaeological resources. However, during the last hearing, it was identified that the assessment that was provided was a draft and incomplete. Although the sand and gravel pit location is within existing farmland, it has many years of disturbance. The operation proposes a depth of 30 feet, which still could have resources within that area. Staff recommends a completed archaeological assessment with possibly analysis of subsurface areas to kind of get a picture of what could be underneath there prior to. If not, and the board wants to move forward with this, staff also recommends a condition of approval that a licensed professional archaeologist be on site to monitor the excavation, or other measures that the board may want to draft. Let's see here. Let me move along here. The project, again, we didn't have a site plan when we reviewed this, so the project is within a mapped floodplain. It's an A zone, and our code says section 0710A 01110, any development within an A zone where it has no base flood information. If it's on a subdivision of over 50 lots or development on property over 5 acres, they would have to do what is called a base flood elevation study. Based on the previous site plan, this falls into that requirement. This is something that could be added as a condition, though, if it were to move forward. Real briefly, we received a lot of late exhibits, a lot of letters, and just to go over those briefly, we have Exhibit 8, letter of opposition from the Historic Preservation Commission. Exhibit 9, letter of opposition from Scott Hauser of the Snake River Tribes Foundation. Exhibit 10, a letter of opposition from Upper Snake River Tribes Foundation Tribal Commissioners. Exhibit 11, letter of opposition from Mark McDonough. And so Mr. McDonough has probably 3 exhibits that have been submitted, and those are provided to you. Exhibit 12, letter of opposition from Steve and Michaela Jones, who is one of Michaela is Mrs. Jones is listening in. Exhibit 13, letter of opposition from Nadine Givens. Exhibit 14, another letter from Mark McDonough. Exhibit 15, letter from Rob Burden. Exhibit 16, letter of opposition from the appellant Dan Woodruff. In this letter, as you may see, the appellant is requesting that the letter be read into the record, and I will leave that to the board to decide after staff's presentation if that is okay and who should read it into the record. Exhibit 17, a letter of opposition from Brad and Melissa Bradford. Exhibit 19, letter of opposition from Justin Brace. And Exhibit 19, letter of exhibit from Randy Fox of the Idaho Conservation League. So we received about 15 letters of opposition, and their main concern, just to summarize it, is historic cultural resources. So concerned about the archaeological resources in the area. It's determined that this is a archaeological district that should be protected. Also, historic sites. This is not too far away from Givens Hot Springs. Tribal representatives have identified this as a sacred site, as something not just physical, but something spiritual. Also, this is a scenic byway, scenic corridor where there's a lot of tourism. Wildlife, natural resources. It's near the Snake River, where there's a lot of recreational resources and uses, and wildlife. Water rights and water contamination to the surrounding users. Out of character is the big one. Incompatible use, dust, noise that are generated that's not normal for that area. Traffic that's not normal for the area. The use is not for only the restoration of Rippey Island. So there's no guarantee that once you approve it that the use would stop. And then Idaho Power should be the applicant, not the gravel operators, and also that the gravel source can be gained somewhere else and not necessarily this site. Exhibit 20 is a letter from Josh Davis of Granite Extraction, which did provide a site plan, as you can see here. So the difference would be, instead of that 135 acres, there would be a primary location of 35.9 acres, as you can see in red, and then down below is a secondary location of 4.1 acres. And in that exhibit, there was some questions that were answered by the applicant, and I'll just quickly go through them. They said, are they willing to use the material only for the restoration project? They said yes or no. If it's a deal breaker, then yes, they would use it only for the restoration, but their desire is to use it not just for the restoration, but for other projects in the area. They do not have any other projects right now that would utilize this site at this point. They still want the truck trips that were provided in the original application, which is 10 truck trips, I believe. I'll let the applicant speak to that. They are not willing to hire a licensed professional archaeologist to monitor the excavation. It's not cost effective and it's not industry standard, so they're not willing to do that. And then they said about 4 to 5 people will be working on site. So that is part of Exhibit 20. Again, staff only reviewed this based on the letter that was received to the board for that reconsideration. So there was not a lot to go off of. So staff is recommending that the board open the public hearing and discuss the reconsideration. If the board approves the reconsideration, then please direct staff to provide new findings and new conditions of approval. If the Board of County Commissioners denies the reconsideration, direct staff to revise the current findings, facts, and conclusions law, which is Exhibit 2, to include this reconsideration and the denial of it. Staff recommends that the board continue the discussion and require the applicant to provide revised site plans, reclamation plan, project narrative, and any updated reports such as the archaeological survey. And that concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you, Dan. Any questions for Dan at this time?
I think I'll wait until after testimony time. I've got some comments and questions, but I think I'll wait.
Okay, Commissioner Van Beek? No, this time. Okay. Okay, so we're going to go now to,
I do have, excuse me, I'm sorry. Dan, I do have one question that came up. I think you can answer it right now. I heard, and maybe you were referring back to the previous application, but there's sort of a conflicting report that I heard from you. One is that with this present configuration, there would be 0 truck trips out on the road. And the other one, they're still asking for 10 truck trips. So can you maybe just clarify that a little bit?
Correct. So based on staff's review, the Rippey Island Restoration Project, that, because it's so close to where the restoration is, would not have any truck trips. That would be the benefit of having this pit. However, the applicant doesn't want to use it just for that. They want to use it for other projects, which would generate the truck trips.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes, you're welcome. So now we're going to move to the applicant. And, first of all, well, we'll get to that when we get, I want to know who's going to read the opening statement.
Or do we need to?
Or do we need to?
You know, Madam Chair, I would just say, I think all of us have probably read that letter. I know, right? You read that letter from Dan Woodruff?
Dan Woodruff, opening statement.
I have read that, but he specifically asked if it could be read into the record, so I think.
Well, I would just offer that it is part of the record. It is written in there, and it's a very well stated letter. There's some things in there that I would say were unnecessary, but if it is part of the record, and I don't know that I need to hear it again.
Well, I just wonder if he has asked someone to do that for him.
Yeah.
So if he has asked someone, so that individual will need to speak up at the appropriate time. If there is someone that was asked to read that, otherwise I can read it myself.
I think somebody should read it onto the record. That was a request in there. And Dan, I don't know, I tried to call, and Trish said she was going to follow up on it, but we have a request from a citizen in an open meeting to read his statements onto the record, and I think that should be honored.
So what we'll do now is we'll move on to the applicant, and this is not, it's a different, because this is requested by Granite, we will have Josh, who said he was the speaker for them. So Josh, you are now on record as the applicant.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, Josh Davis, 8 San Ignacio Way, Cascade, Idaho, 83611. And I'd like to thank you for giving us the opportunity for this motion of reconsideration. Josh Leonard, our legal counsel, will get more into the legalities based upon our request for reconsideration. I will more speak to the changes as requested into the operation. It was very apparent at the last hearing that this project, there's a lot of concerns tied to the size, the scale, and the duration of the project, as it was previously requested for 30 years and 150 some odd acres. So we took those concerns and went back to the drawing board in an effort to come to a sort of compromise, which would still allow us to potentially fulfill some contractual obligations and with minimal public disturbance, but at a much smaller scale. And so, as you have seen, and I apologize for the late submission of the revised grading plan, site plan rather, but originally, pertaining to the sand and gravel operation, which sits on the south side of Map Rock Road, we had originally had 2 phases proposed. And then we had a primary source and a secondary source that were strictly to be used for the Rippey Island project. We have since, in our revised site plan, expanded the primary source from 11.33 acres to 35.9 acres. And the secondary source remains the same at 4.1 acres. In doing so, we increased the setback from Maprock Road by over 400 feet. So we moved our operations, our proposed site where we will operate out of 400 feet further away from Maprock Road to the south than originally proposed. In addition to that, we had originally requested a 30-year application, which is pretty consistent with our typical gravel pit operations. As you probably understand, there's a significant amount of costs up front to get these pits approved, and also all of the quality control testing, reclamation plans, survey, ARC studies, so on and so forth, that it takes a substantial amount of time to recoup the initial investment. So typically we have our other pits, we have them on 30-year terms. But we have offered to reduce that to 5 years, which is an 83% reduction in the duration from which we previously asked for. And I know that was of grave concern, not only to staff, the Board of Commissioners, but the public as well. Secondly, instead of a proposal consisting of extraction of riprap and sand and gravel, we are now only requesting the area south of Maprock Road for the sand and gravel operation. We have completely removed the riprap proposal application, if you will, off the Talus slopes to the north of Maprock Road. There was a lot of concern discussed regarding the potential historical and cultural resources that may be in that area. So we've removed that completely. And thirdly, instead of potentially extracting up to 180 acres total, we reduced this request down to 40 acres in its entirety, which is a 78% reduction in the area. And staff is correct in the fact that the archaeological study presented due to time restraints was a draft. However, that draft cultural and archaeological survey report, which was written by a qualified historian and a qualified archaeologist, concluded that no historical or cultural resources would be negatively impacted by the proposed use. And this should have been sufficient to warrant granting the CUP, but it wasn't. And there was a lot of discussions on this person's credibility, which I found quite offensive due to the fact that this is he's a 25-year veteran of it. This is what he does. He's in Northern California assessing archaeological impacts in a location of a fire blast that occurred recently, and was unable to attend this meeting because he's in a remote area. But he's a professional, and the information that he put in the report was facts. And I think we need to take that into consideration. Lastly, as discussed by staff and as presented by us in a couple of the previous hearings, the Rippey Island project is slated to happen. It still is. And everybody is fully aware that if this project doesn't occur, if we are not granted the ability to extract aggregates off Mr. Nicholson's property, which is directly adjacent to this project, there's going to be upwards of 10,000 trucks that come in and out of that area with no restrictions, because quite frankly, that's not enforceable on the county level or ITD's level. Because this is a new application being submitted in front of you, you guys have the ability to mitigate for potential impacts. And I think that's noting that is part of the reason that we reduced our anticipated truck counts to 10 per day, which is far less than any gravel pit I've ever been around as far as conditions of approval. But it's what we agreed to, and then it's what we agreed to stand behind. But if this project isn't approved and the Rippey Island project proceeds this fall, there's going to be 10,000 trucks coming up and down Map Rock Road and the adjacent highway. I believe that summarizes kind of the bullet points of the new plan of operations, rather. I would stand for questions, or if Josh Leonard, our counsel, would like to touch base on the legal reasons for this proposal, I'll let him do that at this time.
I think there are some questions for you, Josh, for Josh Davis. So is that Commissioner Dan?
I really just have one basic question. I believe I read in your letter that you don't really want to be restricted to using this gravel for only the Rippey Island project. But if it was a deal breaker, you would agree to utilize this gravel for only Rippey Island. Is that a correct understanding?
Yes, sir, that is. My intentions were not to forward that communication that had occurred between our counsel and I, but I did, and I stand behind that. Okay. We like to position ourselves as a contractor to have a competitive advantage on highway construction projects by having the closest aggregate source to the project. When and where those projects are change from a year-to-year basis, but that is the intent of having multiple gravel sources, so that we can minimize our truck trips to the site, which minimizes costs to the taxpayers. But I will stand behind my statement in that email. Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. That's the only question I had right now.
Commissioner Van Beek, if you have a question. I have a quick one, Josh. It seems like, and I might be confusing things here, but it seems like at the last hearing that you said that you would like to have this place considered for retail. Is that correct? Or has that changed?
Correct. In our original application, we had, at our operations plan, we had proposed retail sales, yes.
Okay. Is that still going to be part of your plan that the locals or neighbors or whatever that residents, are you still going to do a retail?
Yes, that is correct.
Thank you. Commissioner Van Beek.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have just a hypothetical question that follows the questions that you put in the email dated May 28th, which is your interoffice communication. So would you consider restricting this to a 5-year time period with a cease and desist at the end of that to service the Rippey project only?
I apologize. I maybe didn't catch what the question was.
Would you consider a 5-year time restriction where it's a cease and desist once this is done servicing the Rippey project, restricting that use only to meeting the needs for Idaho Power? It's a yes or no question.
No, I would not agree to a cease and desist due to the fact that we don't know what other projects may be coming. Idaho Power has indicated that there's going to be additional adjacent projects to Rippey Island in the future. And so
Okay. So in that, I hear that there's nothing that would keep you from coming back at the end of a 5-year conditional use to reapply for another use, another extension.
Well, if a project that was occurring warranted an extension at 5 years, then yes, I would come back to the board for a request to extend.
And did Idaho Power put out an RFQ for this project?
Yes.
Okay, and who else is being considered in that?
That's was not privy info to us. We're on
Okay.
Idaho Power's short list. As a pre-qualified contractor, so I know we were. I'm not sure who else was.
Okay, and then I have I guess a question as it relates back to the three things that you took into consideration when evaluating this new proposal. You said size, scale, and duration, but I didn't hear anywhere in there where you took into consideration the religious or spiritual component, which was a big part of the testimony that was in opposition.
We were asked prior to submitting this application to provide an archaeological study to determine if there was significant cultural resources in this area, which is what we did. And you have the findings of that.
And I do have the findings, and those findings are partially correct. They are full of errors. It's a draft report, and then in that, I guess I'm interested that what your comments are, if you've looked at the rest of the staff report that includes information from the Upper Snake River Valley tribe. It includes information from Howard Neville, who's an expert. It includes information from an expert in an archaeological field that all contradict the findings that there are not significant archaeological findings in that. So I'm just wondering on that scale, how you would weigh that.
I will weigh that against the fact that our professional provided the report as we were asked, as well as Idaho Power has done significant archaeological assessments in that area, which also were provided to the staff. Those are the facts that we have at hand. They've been the boots in the field. I'm not certain if these other experts have been in Mr. Nicholson's field doing exploration, but if they have, I believe they don't have permission to be doing that.
Commissioner Van Beek, I want to say that those things were spoken to in the last hearing, and this one, we have an opportunity here as staff provided at the end to request other things like that. So,
and I appreciate that, Madam Chair. I'm referring to Exhibit 8, which is new. I'm referring to Exhibit 9, which is new. I'm referring to Exhibit 10, which is new, and there's another exhibit in here, Exhibit 17 on extension. So I appreciate that. I am referring to exhibits that were received late last night and this morning. So thank you.
I wanted to clarify something, Josh. This Rippey, is it Rippey Island?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, that project is not going to take 5 years.
It is anticipated to take 2 years is my recollection.
So, and there are other ones, that's what's reported to us in the last hearing. Idaho Power has other ones in that area where if this were approved, your trucks would not need to leave this site to do the future projects. If you have any information about those from Idaho Power?
I actually have information on those from Idaho Power.
And who would that be?
This is Heidi Brace. We actually spoke to an engineer from Idaho Power.
Just a second. Heidi?
Yes.
You were against this project, right?
Yep.
And you didn't wish to speak. So,
if you'd like, I can be sworn in.
You can, but we're not doing the people that are against it right yet, okay? So you'll get your opportunity. You'll get your opportunity. We'll come back to you. Okay.
Oh.
So, in other words, Josh, your 5-year window, is it going to allow ecological or preservation or other projects in that 5-year time frame with Idaho Power?
Potentially, yes, within that time frame, if Idaho Power does the additional projects, it's likely that those materials will come from this site.
Okay, so the trucks would not have to leave that site to continue to get that area of the Snake River taken care of?
That is correct.
That's all the information. Any other questions for Josh Davis at this time? Okay, Dusty or Josh Leonard, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, and thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. Joshua Leonard, 251 East Front Street, Suite 310, Boise, 83701. And I wanted to start by addressing one of the questions raised by Commissioner Van Beek with regard to the archaeological and cultural impacts that were noted. I would point out specifically to Commissioner Van Beek that none of those letters contain any evidence of the existence of items on that property. If you read them carefully, they don't actually say that the proposed use will have any negative effects. Rather, they use words like propensity, they use the word may, potentially, could have, can have, typically include, has the potential to, likely that, has been suggested that, likely will, would have accumulated, or could be there on the property. The reason why opponents can't say for certain that they don't have that there are items on this site is that they have no evidence that items of cultural, historical, or archaeological significance are on the property. The only evidence in the record that's actual evidence is the draft study, and it found no items of cultural, historical, or archaeological significance in the area of the proposed use. One thing I found interesting in all of those letters that discussed archaeological and cultural impacts is that they drew a false equivalency, and I'll tell you what I mean by that. They cited properties several miles away on which items of cultural significance have been found, and then they started talking about the subject property as though it was those properties, and it just isn't. Their hope is that you'll simply overlook the total lack of evidence with regard to items on this property and focus on the what is evidence with regard to other property. Speaking of that, and you, Commissioner Van Beek, also raised questions about the completeness or the errors in that draft archaeological and cultural resources study. I want to again clarify that that was not required to be submitted prior to starting the work, and yet the Granite Excavation chose to expedite that and get that put together in a draft form, and we've made very clear it was a draft form for public review and comment. One of staff's recommended conditions of approval based on this revised application is to update that existing archaeological analysis. Updating it may be unnecessary because this area that's proposed was in the area that was considered by the initial one, but certainly it is the plan to formalize that, to finalize that, edit that for content, and provide that to the county. And we will do that. I also wanted to take a quick moment and thank the commission for hearing us on this matter, as Mr. Davis said. Several commenters in the written record misinterpreted the tone and intent of our letter and assumed that we were threatening litigation. That wasn't our intent, and what we intended to do was threefold. The first thing that we intended to do was demonstrate that we had listened to the Board of Commissioners at the last couple of public hearings, especially in the closing comments that were made right before the vote, and we reduced the scale and intensity and the type of use of the intensity. And our primary goal was to create a workable compromise, and I'll get back to that in just a second. The other thing, the other two were we recognized and identified several errors in process and fact throughout the proceedings. And instead of needless litigation that's going to cost everybody's money and time, we wanted to give the county an opportunity to correct those. it wasn't a threat as much as it was trying to be a good citizen. I think one of the commenters even went so far as to call me one of the worst things that you can call a person, an attorney. And that's while I understand that's my profession, I'm also a citizen of the state. On to our compromise proposal, as Josh mentioned.
Just wanted to.
Yeah, as Josh mentioned, it's a significant reduction in the area and types of use, and it will allow trucks from this site to go directly to the Rippey Island site and potentially other reclamation or ecological projects that are done by Idaho Power in the future. The last topic I want to cover is a couple of comments that were made in the May 8th letter from Harold Neville, PhD. Dr. Neville's letter included two primary contentions. The first, he attempted to refute the fact that a CUP can't be denied, only conditioned. And what he tried to say was that he actually tried to compare the incompatibility of liquor stores to nearby churches and schools and draw that comparison to this case, which just shows planning and zoning is a tricky field of practice. And Commissioner Van Beek referred to Dr. Neville as an expert before, and I'm sure that's true in some disciplines. I'm afraid that's not true in the area of planning and zoning. In planning and zoning, the county's opportunity to flat out deny this use in this area came when they were making up the table of approved uses. They could have chosen, the county could have chosen to make this a use that was permitted as a matter of right. They could have chosen to make this a conditional use, which they did, which is that it's allowable but based on conditions, or they could have prohibited it outright. And in this matter, the county selected the option to permit it, but with conditions. The second argument that Dr. Neville made was to counter my earlier argument that the commission cannot consider the Snake River Canyon Scenic Byways Corridor Management Plan. Really quickly, I want to touch on the fact that I agree with Dr. Neville that the corridor management plan had been approved by the Idaho Transportation Department. The distinction, however, is that the county cannot use the standards in that plan unless that plan is adopted by the county, and the county has not adopted that or approved that. Dr. Neville's conclusion that no separate adoption by Canyon County was or is now required could not be more wrong, and it's in the realm of the planning and zoning sphere, and again, it's a tricky discipline, and it's really based a lot on that Local Land Use Planning Act and on case law. So I don't fault him, but at the same time, I want the commission to have a true statement of the law before it. I'm grateful again for the opportunity to speak today and for your consideration of the application, and would stand for questions.
I have something that I have to say. This is Commissioner White. And on your letter to us, you had under C, box C, benefits of approving applicant's proposed compromise. Okay. You have as number one, the compromise would avoid costly judicial review. And it goes on to say, due to several procedural irregularities and numerous other problems with the county's denial of the applicant's CUP, and in light of the stakes in this matter, Granite Excavation would have no choice but to challenge the county's CUP denial in district court. I think that is a pretty direct statement regarding legal action on this. So you I think, stand corrected just a little bit in that statement, Josh. Thank you. Do any of you others have a question or a comment? Commissioner Van Beek.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I appreciate your comments and your astuteness in finding that comment. I wanted to go to the Snake River Tribes document. That's Exhibit 8. It's page 2. And on the back of that, under footnote 10, says further, the draft cultural resource survey and assessment, submitted by Granite Excavation admits that the proposed surface mine operation could uncover a pre-contact village. There is potential for a pre-contact village associated with the talus pit within the first bend of the project area. If so, it is most likely that land leveling and farming has removed all trade. However, there is a remote chance that deeper soils may contain undisturbed remains of house pits from earlier areas. Thus, although farming and land leveling would not dig deep enough to uncover and destroy ancestral pits, but it would take the cultural resources from that depth, surface mining indubitably would, causing irreparable and irremediable injury to the tribe's sacred ancestral ground. Not only is it highly likely that the proposed site contains ancestral pit houses, it is possible that the site contains burial remains of the tribe's ancestors due to the discovery of nearby talus pits above the proposed site. And then I guess I want to reference in that, so that includes part of testimony from Granite, and then that deeper excavation of that would interfere. Now we're talking about a religious component and the sacredness of the Indian tribe's right to protect their burial sites. So we've referenced in the past federal law, the Arlupa law, that protects an entity and a protected group, the Indian tribes of this area, to maintain the sacredness of their burial site and to exercise religious freedom in that on this piece of ground. And because you are correct, this is private ground, so no one would know. And we know now because of the email dated, that interoffice email, that Granite Excavation is not willing to hire a licensed professional archaeologist. And I'm sorry, Josh, but if you were to go into court and you did not have the legal education to present a case, you would not be allowed to prosecute or defend or whatever it is you're doing. So to downplay the importance or the educational training of someone that has a master's degree or that level of training, to say that I could go in and do what you do, I'm going to politely disagree with that.
Okay, we're straying from what the decision that needs to be made here this afternoon. So we're going to move on. Do you have, Commissioner Dale, did you have any questions for Mr. Leonard?
I didn't really have any questions. And I want to let everybody know that I've not made up my mind on it. I'm trying to gather information. I'm not going to make statements for or against during this, but I just want to put in that there has been, I really appreciated Josh pointing out that and I read this in the tribe letters, they did use words like may, might possibly, could have, there's a remote chance that there could be. That's really skimpy evidence that and there is no evidence so far that I've seen that there are actually burial grounds on the farm ground that they've been farming for decades. So, and I'm not speaking against or for this, I'm just saying that's the evidence as I see it. So that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Commissioner Dale. Okay, and we have nothing else for either of the Joshes. Thank you so much. You will get a chance for rebuttal because we're going to move on. And this is the point where we would make, this would be Mr. Woodruff's opening statement. So,
I've got it right here.
Legal.
Madam Chair, I'm the only one that expressed any kind of reservation, but I'm willing to read this if we'd like to have it read. I've got it right here.
From an evidentiary purpose, Madam Chair, I think that's the question you're asking. It is valuable to the board as an exhibit that you could take into consideration as having it read. The only, I think, benefit to that would be if there's anyone who's not had access to it. I know it was Dan Lister likely uploaded it to the county's website, and so it should be available for public view and review there, and Dan Lister can clarify that.
Dan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, so late exhibits 8 through 16 were uploaded onto the website, which includes Mr. Woodruff's letter. 17 through 20 were not, but they were provided to the applicants today as well as Mr. Woodruff.
Okay, very good. Good information. Thank you, Dan.
And Madam Chair, I just wanted to say this was the only applicant that requested in opposition to have that read onto the record, and I'm still in favor of having that read. I don't care who does it, but it was a request, and I think it should be honored in its entirety.
It's on the website and it's in the record. And I understand that he can't be here, but in the interest, there are other people that he also has a closing statement on here as well. And I want to make sure that we get this heard today. So I think that what we'll do right now, we'll have Lee, is it Lee Wan?
Yeah, hello.
Are you there? Yes, Lee Wan, you have something to say against this proposal?
Yeah, am I first to go or what?
Yes, you are free to go. We want to know what you have to say.
All right, thank you, Madam Chairwoman, and everyone else there, the board, and if you guys are going by Robert's rules or however, this is a hearing, but I'm currently the chairman for the First Snake River Tribe, and we're named after the Snake River. They are our enemy tribes to call us Snake Indians, and unfortunately, Blackfeet and others, and that's how this area became known as the Snake River. We call ourselves Nuwin, the people. But that's when the mountain fur trappers first came. They learned about our name, so they gave us a snake name, and the Snake Indians, Western snakes, upper snakes, lower snakes, eastern snakes, southwestern, and so forth. Also, prior to the state of Idaho, our people were on both sides of the Rocky Mountains, all the way to the Pacific coast, the Modocs, and all there, and Paiutes, and all the way down to Mexico, Comanches, and down there, Hopis. We were in Canada before there was a Canada. Diseases wiped us out. This was one of our areas, and there was all kinds of things happened throughout the life of prior to the non-Indians and Euro-Americans coming over here. There was a life of prestigious life, thousands, 300,000 years ago, like over there at Hagerman, where they found one of our ancestral grandmothers. They called her Buell, Idaho. And she was uncovered due to excavation of projects prior to laws and acts and all these things. That was around 1996, and she was determined to be 12,750 years old, and when they carbon dated her. But burial sites are there for a reason. Burial sites are like your loved one, right? You would want them buried in a place, and would you want them removed? That area was chosen for a reason. So that's just like the graveyard. There's the individual, our people throughout the years, when somebody passed away, you got no time to bury them somewhere. You got, if it's below zero weather, or by the river, or there's burials in the rivers as well, streams and creeks, and in areas of nobody wants to be disturbed. There's areas of women do certain things, men do certain things. In our role, in our culture, in our Diniwap, in our teaching, we have a lot of, when we have newborn baby, the umbilical cord is put in a sacred area anywhere in those agricultural lands, anywhere you can't see it. No one wants to do that. That's women as being birth to life. You'd want that protected. That's another example. And driving rivers, and we used to be able to drink out of those rivers, hot springs. And the Snake River was so pure. And then, and our people were down in that area for centuries. And then when the Euro-Americans came, unfortunately, I don't want to be negative or offend anyone, but all these things occurred, and the bounties of scalps were put on us. There's a dreaded name over there called Squaw Creek. That's not even from our tribe. That came from the Algonquian people from back east. Because people don't realize there's different languages. The Europeans have different languages, Latin languages, and all these different languages that are similar to speaking. And all the way down to tip of South America, all the way up, and some of the languages are similar. We say "ba" is water, but that beautiful area was part of the hugest Dronomus fish runs, salmon runs, all kinds of different species. And so that's what I'm bringing this up, because the negativity that was going on, there's only one side reporting. When you mention Idaho Power, that's like the fox in the hen house, and hire anybody. That's the conflict. If you want it to be fair, you better get somebody else in there that's going to make it fair, that's going to do the right, the surveys and right archaeological excavation, so they could be,
Okay.
the ethnographical studies need to be fair, not one-sided like
Thank
was
you.
mentioned.
Thank you,
I'm not
Luan.
sure how much time I'm supposed to have. How much time am I supposed to have? Because
Luan, your time is up. So thank you
the other
very
guy,
much.
Josh got to talk forever, and
But Josh is
about,
the
what side
applicant.
recording.
Josh is the applicant. And
Oh,
so
that's why.
the applicant, in our ordered rules, the way we conduct our, these public hearings, the applicant gets more time. So thank you
Well, I
very
just want
much
one more
for the
comment.
information.
One more quick comment. I just want to admit, like, what if you were sick? Would you want one doctor to check you and examine you? You want 3 or 4, right, to make sure you don't have cancer or some kind of dread disease like this COVID. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. Okay, let's see. Okay, we have a lot of people that have expressed they're on the WebEx and they expressed that they are against. I think that there's no one else, unless Travis Mitchell, and also Carolyn Smith is registered, but she doesn't have a microphone. So she called earlier and said that she had sent her statements to Lee Juan Tyler, hoping that he would express those. If he didn't, she's going to send a message through chat. Okay. I didn't know how else to help her on that. Okay, thank you, Monica. Thank you. So Travis, are you there?
I'm here. Excuse me. Appreciate
Okay.
it.
Okay.
Travis Mitchell, 10952 Maprock Road. I just wanted to touch base on a couple of things. I've looked at this new proposal and that, and it's nice, but I think it's still, the issues that were brought forth in the previous hearing are still in place. All the issues of cultural, the traffic, the water, and all that stuff. There's nothing really changed here. And so what I'm concerned about here is that if we allow them to come in, that once that door is open, that it's going to be very hard to close. And I think we've heard here today that they are more than willing to go back and come back to you guys and ask for more time or more, so they can do more projects. And it's obvious that they want to do projects way beyond what Idaho Power is looking at them to do. And so I think that once you set a precedent, that it's going to be very hard to go back. And again, it doesn't fit with the scenic byway designation. That's something that needs to be looked at. I believe that the county, it's maybe time to look at putting some teeth in that and make sure that we preserve some of these areas for the future because of the growth that's going on. 5 years seems like a long time for just one simple project. It only took about 5 months on the last one. So I'm asking that you guys consider this very carefully, because I'm convinced that if you allow them to take one truckload of gravel out of there, that we're going to be sitting here with a gravel pit for the next 30 years, as the original plan was. I don't care what they say. I think that's their original. They want to make money. They want to haul gravel out of here, and that's the bottom line. And that's not going to change. And so we need to see if that's compatible with here. Now, this Idaho Power project is probably the best place for them, cheapest for them, but is that the best for the general public? And I think Idaho Power probably could come up with another alternative that wouldn't have the impact, even though we've been told that there's going to be, I don't know how, I can't remember, a horrendous amount of trucks going. I'm not sure that's actually going to take place like that. I think Idaho Power is going to look at different options, like they did on the last one that did it over here. But anyway, thanks for your time. Appreciate your efforts. That's all.
Mr. Mitchell, you live on Map Rock Road?
I do.
How long have you lived on Map Rock Road?
We've been here 5 years.
5 years. Okay, very, very good. Thank you so much. Any other questions for Mr. Mitchell at this time? Okay. These people,
I think there was one more on WebEx, Heidi.
Heidi,
Changed her mind. She wanted to
she
testify.
is, yes.
Swear her in.
Okay, Heidi, we'll swear you in right now.
Okay.
Heidi Brace, you swear or affirm the testimony you give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. So help you God?
Yes.
Okay.
So we recently just spoke to an engineer from Idaho Power, and apparently the Rippey Island project, the one that Granite's referring to, has been postponed due to this matter and I guess other matters for number one. And Granite hasn't even won the bid on this yet, so I'm not sure why they're pushing so hard for this when the bid hasn't been awarded, for number one. And if based on the information that we received, the first island that was done out there by Idaho Power, the landowner allowed material to be used for an earth dam and to minimize the amount that was used for repairs. And then that land was reclaimed, and there was no long-term mining, and no crushing continued on it. It was a short process. It lasted less than 120 days, and minimal amounts of the material that did not need to be screened or crushed, but they were screened. So I just feel like somebody's trying to slip in under the radar on this, whether they're on the short list or not. And basically, the other jobs that Idaho Power has, this engineer told us that those have been postponed indefinitely. They don't even know, they have no idea. And so we asked, are we looking the next 5 years, the next 10 years? He said, you know what? It could be longer than that. So I'm not quite sure what the whole underlying thing is here, but why is it that everybody's pushing so hard to get this when the bid hasn't even been awarded?
Okay, thank you, Heidi. The applicant gets to come back, so that's a good time. He's probably taking note to your question, so thank you.
Okay, perfect.
Any other questions for
Madam Chair? I just wanted to clarify. Heidi, you are not employed with Idaho Power, is that correct?
That is correct. I am not employed by Idaho Power.
Okay. And Madam Chair, do we have an Idaho Power representative anywhere online with us today?
That would be a question for Josh. When he comes back, let's ask Josh.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
David. Okay?
I'm in the chair. This is Nate Seal speaking. I am an Idaho Power employee.
Oh, and you said you didn't want to talk, but you're going to?
Yes.
Is it Nathaniel?
Yes.
Okay. Nathaniel, so we got to swear you in. Do you have questions for Commissioner Van Beek?
And I'm sorry, he said he was an Idaho Power employee.
And it's Nathaniel.
Yes, I have a question.
So we got to swear. Well, Nathaniel, what's your last name?
Seal.
Seal. Okay.
Nathaniel Seal, do you swear or affirm the testimony you give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth? So help you God?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Madam Chair, Mr. Seal, I have questions. Could you confirm, or where is Idaho Power at in the bid process for this project? And is the project on hold?
So I guess a question for you, are you referring to the Rippey project or the
Correct.
mining permit? Okay. So the Rippey project, was scheduled for construction starting this summer. And in March was postponed to 2021 at the earliest, summer of 2021.
Okay. And then I have a question. If we look at the maps, and I'm getting to that exhibit. So that would be Exhibit 4, Rippey Island Research Project. Do you have a map in front of you? Or you're familiar enough evidently with this project, maybe you don't need a map, but my question has to do with just the geography there. So it looks like there is no land bridge anywhere. This is truly an island in the middle of the Snake River, is that right?
It is, yep.
Okay, and so if we're talking about access, what's on the other side of the river that would be available? What I'm talking about are alternative sites, or can you speak at all to that process? Are you going to go out for bid again next summer?
Yes, it will go out for bid next summer.
Okay. So that's a really relevant question then as to why there's this push when we don't have completed surveys. And is there anything you would like to add to the record for this?
Yeah, there are several things that I would like to clarify.
I want to remind us that we are speaking to this request that is an appeal that Granite has come back and offered a compromise to that, and I want to keep it directed to the specifics of the decision that we're going to make. And so with Idaho Power, I think the information we got here, we don't need to get into that business aspect of Idaho Power.
And Madam Chair, the only reason I'm asking is because it is an exhibit that was provided by Granite Excavation. It's Exhibit 20. And one of the proposals that was brought up early is if they would consider just having this site for the Idaho Power Rippey project. And if the answer was yes, and that was, then this becomes a very moot point for the board. That's the relevancy.
Well, Madam Chair, I don't want to get, this discussion should be after we've heard all the testimony, because I won't respond to that, but it should be after we've heard all the testimony.
That's fine.
So, Nathaniel, thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. Rob Bearden. He is here in the public meeting room. Please.
I'm Rob Bearden. I live at 16056 Roscoe Lane. It's a little side road right off of Map Rock Road. We heard Josh talk about the Rippey Island project. Just heard that there really isn't a Rippey Island project yet. We also heard him say that he wanted to do it for 5 years, and then we heard him say that they're not going to stop after 5 years. This really does sound like a way to get their foot into the door and continue with this project for as long as they care to. It's not a good fit for the area, and we've already discussed it. He referred back to planning and zoning. Planning and zoning, that meeting, there was, I believe the law is you have to inform the people within 300 feet of your neighborhood meeting. There's nobody within 300 feet there. We didn't even hear about it. The only way we found out about it was we just happened to stumble into Dan Lister, and he was the one who said, yeah, there's a planning and zoning meeting there. There was only 2 people there. One of the people on the Planning and Zoning Commission knew the guy on the Granite construction team. Just like the first commission meeting we had, very convenient. We had 10 days to decide between Christmas and New Year's, where we, all of that is probably mute, but I am opposed to the project.
Thank you for taking the time to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Yes.
What's the proximity to Map Rock Road?
I could throw a rock at it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how long have you lived there?
I bought the property. We're not on the record. The microphone, we're not going to be talking back there.
He's just wanting him to stand at the podium.
Okay.
I bought the property, I bought and paid for the property in the last 3 years, and we just moved in December this year.
Okay,
And
thank you.
you're welcome.
Okay, Nikki Schwend.
Yes, Commissioners, thank you for your time. I just want to resolve some of the issues that were brought up. One of the things that was brought up is there's no proof that something is there. Unfortunately, welcome to the life of an archaeologist at times. If we could have X-ray vision into what's underground, a lot fewer of us would have jobs and a lot of projects would be much simpler. Especially in an area like this that has been farmed, and even the own draft site report said that on the lower terraces, if anything, archaeological evidence has been buried deeper. Within their own report, it said soil was brought from upper down to lower, so if there is anything, it's probably down there deeper. So you wouldn't expect to find things on the surface. So when we get to a situation like that, we look at the surrounding area for evidence to support or not support that we may or may not find something. What we have here is an area that is surrounded by archaeological sites. So we have to proceed with great caution that means we may find things, and we have to be very careful because, again, we get one chance in archaeology. There's no do-over. Once it's destroyed, once it's missed, it's gone. And this is an area with great archaeological potential. In fact, because of this, there has been lots of conversations between archaeologists, other entities, SHPO, that really this area needs to be presented as a National Register of Historic Places district and go through that to get that listing the same way the Guffey Butte Black Butte archaeological area was listed. Now, and doing even more research, the Guffey Butte Black Butte Archaeological District was made into a district because it was an area where farming wasn't happening at the time. So that was easy. And in the 70s, it was, let's get things listed on the National Register, let's do it. Looking at our own preservation plan, talking with fellow archaeologists, all that, this really has enough sites in this area to be listed as another district, and has the greatest potential in the whole county for archaeological information. So we have to proceed very cautiously, and that's what we're trying to do. As the Historic Preservation Officer for the county, it's my job to make sure that our Historic Preservation Commission maintains its standing, and that we proceed according to the national or the Secretary of Interior standards for these types of things. There was an indication that there were personal attacks on the historian and archaeologist who did this report. I would say quite the opposite. It was very unfortunate, I felt, that I had to assess the draft report. I also had to just assess that, hey, they're not listed as qualified in archaeology on the state website. That's all I can do is tell you the facts, that I don't see that they're listed. The individual was listed for history, but not archaeology. And that we have a report where the conclusion that they keep referencing that says nothing was there is provable to be a site that is in Boise below Siemens Gulch. So the fact that they keep coming back to the conclusion that nothing was there, we have an unfinished site report with some serious contradictions there. It references the Eagle Drain and William A. Rolls farmhouse, and it has an address earlier in the report that you can go right to it. It says there, it will have no direct impact. Any such degradation has already occurred due to the many subdivisions already in place all around the project. It is clear that this conclusion does not match the archaeological report. So it was very unfair that we were given a draft report, and I understand the circumstances, but my job is to thoroughly assess what we're given. So what I can tell you is not that they're qualified or not. What I can tell you is that they're not listed for archaeology. If they would like to be, they even said themselves, you can prove it. So that would be great for them to get listed as approved for archaeology.
Thank you.
It is our job to make sure they meet the Secretary of Interior standards, and that we think about this area, and even though it's not National Register listed, this is probably would be a slam dunk as an archaeological district if we get there.
Thank you, Nikki. Are there Any questions? No.
Yes, I do have questions thank you. And Nikki, we covered this last time, but I'm going to state for the record, you are an expert in archaeology. You have the credentials to back up the statements that you're making.
I'm a master's in archaeology and then also on the Historic Preservation Commission. We have another master's in archaeology, and we have Professor Dr. Mark Plume, who literally wrote the book on the archaeology of the Snake River Plain. And he is who I always go to when I have concerns with these. How concerned do you think we should be? He's concerned for this area greatly, and he unfortunately can't be there. Recently retired, distinguished professor, but
And thank you for bringing his book to us. I really
yes,
appreciate it.
his book is amazing, and I wanted you to see it. Also, you know, not just that to give you a significance of the area. The Gibbons Hot Springs just released in March 2020. I still haven't received my copy, but I paid for it. A 250-page site report on the significance of that. So that's one book about one site to go on top of that, all in the same area to give you an idea of what the potential is. And again, if archaeologists could just, you know, X-ray vision and see the evidence, it would be there. That's asking us to predict the future that we can't do. So what we can do is if things proceed, make sure it's done the right way so that if these archaeology things are encountered, they can still be protected.
Madam Chair, I still have questions for Nikki. Can you speak to the Upper Snake River Valley tribe claim that there could be burial sites on there?
So that's not something that I found that interesting because tribes don't really like to indicate where burial sites are. I do, in some of the research I've done, find it that there is stronger evidence that it's near hot springs, such as the Gibbons Hot Springs, they stayed longer. I mean, who wouldn't at a hot springs? Like sometimes you've got to make it, you know, a common sense jump to now. You can last longer, you can stay longer. It was a winter campsite. There is a chance that there could be some there. Can I predict the future? No. But it's a concern. And if a Native American grave site is come across, that the state will step in and halt all operations, but it also has to be disclosed.
Thank you. And one more question. Nikki, as we talk about the district that potentially, because it's so rich in cultural heritage, and you're not just a parks department, you've expanded this with your love for archaeology and your passion so that now you truly are vested in the cultural aspects of this. Tell me what that looks like in terms of what's your greatest need? I think what I'm hearing is it's time to get that district.
Time, archaeological assessments, National Register listings, time to go through the appropriate motions to get better things adopted so that the board doesn't face these tough decisions, so that it's clear from the citizens who are speaking up that there is this desire to have this area as a cultural or natural resource or recreational resource so that we can help them protect it in that way by having conditions on these areas prior to the situation that we're in now. And that hasn't happened. And so again, I believe we talked about this last time. That was part of my first steps as the director in doing the preservation plan. Get us there faster because we're behind. And so now really it is going through some of the bureaucratic steps and having the money to do some of these surveys. It takes a professional and some time to get something listed on the National Register status.
Thank you, Nikki.
So would you say then that some period of injunction or something to allow the time for that process, complete reports, the archaeological surveys, is that due process in terms of protecting sites that we say that we value?
I think we would like to get through those processes to add that into the county's record to protect these things. How long that would take to happen, I can't say, because all I can say how quickly we would move. When you're dealing with National Register status, it probably goes on a list in the National Park Service, and how quickly they can process it, I'm not sure.
But it wasn't enough time between the decision that we made to uphold the appeal today.
No.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nikki. Any other questions? No? Okay. Zach.
Madam Chair, I just had a clarification point I wanted to make on Director Schwinn's testimony. There was an interaction between Director Schwinn and Commissioner Dale regarding a book, a book by Dr. Plew. I just wanted to clarify that book has not been made part of the record or consulted in this hearing's purposes. That's correct, okay.
Thank you.
I was just giving appreciation.
And, yeah, then Zach, if we want that to be entered, I don't know what the exhibit that would be, but.
It would be inappropriate to enter a commercial book like that into the record. It could be, it would be better as a reference point for someone else's testimony or in passages, but the entire manual, I don't believe we could make it available for public use. We don't have the right to that. And then Monica made me aware that there were two parties who are in opposition and have not been able to connect by audio. So instead, they've submitted comments through the chat function in the WebEx. So if we could get Dan Lister to give us an exhibit number for those chat comments, so we could enter them formally into the written record, and then give the board the opportunity to review those.
Through the Madam Chair, the exhibit number will be 21.
Okay, and that's for both Harold Neville and, okay, very good. Thank you, Dan. We got that. Thank you, Zach, very much. Okay. Do you need a couple of minutes now?
I've already read through this.
I have not.
I have no one else signed up to speak. Would you clarify something for me, Zach? They did want to, they are unable, okay?
That's my understanding, Madam Chair, is that they wanted to participate in the hearing by audio. For whatever technical issues, were unable to. And so the arrangement that your staff had worked out is that they would submit their comments in writing through the chat feature.
Okay.
And that's what will be submitted as Exhibit 21 that they're reviewing now.
Okay.
And Madam Chair, I just think it might be appropriate. One of those was from Harold Neville, and he just wanted to, he said if we had any questions about the scenic byway, that he'd be willing to try to respond to that. I don't have any questions regarding that. I understand that pretty well. The other one was from Carolyn Smith, and she just cited a number of things in here. And so I just want, those are the two people that we received comments.
Okay. I think then before we go back to the applicant, before we go back to Josh, if you would, Commissioner Dale, if you would read that, his closing.
Okay. Okay, this is Dan Woodruff's, from Dan Woodruff's, his closing statement. Dear Commissioners, thank you for your service to our county. I know you will make your decision with the future in mind, as once gravel pits are made, they cannot be taken back. Even though this particular hearing is greatly changed in format, I ask you to remember clearly the voices and communications from past meetings. There is no revised site plan, reclamation plan, project narrative, or updated archaeological survey that will change the fact that this area is located in this unique portion of the Snake River Canyon with its narrow, dangerous road and steep canyon walls. There's a reason great effort has been made by so many people to make this a scenic byway. I understand there's pressure on you commissioners by threats to avoid costly, judicious, I think he means judicial review, and to provide gravel material for the proposed Rippey Island project by Idaho Power. Please do not let strong arm tactics play a part in implementing the recommendations that are solidly based on the finding of fact and conclusions of law. Thank you, Dan Woodruff. That's his closing statement.
Okay.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
In the email addressed to Dan Lister, Mr. Woodruff requested, would it be possible to have my attached opening and closing statements read? I'm happy to read the opening statement but to read a part of that without the other, that was not the request. It was a request to have the opening and the closing statement. Commissioner Dale just read the closing.
Let's have that opening statement.
My name is Dan Woodruff, and I live at 1140 Map Rock Road. I would like to express appreciation for the amazing country, state, and county that I live in that allows me so many freedoms as a citizen. Many lives have been given both literally and figuratively by Americans who step up to the call to serve. Those servants include you, our county representatives, who work where the rubber hits the road. Your task is not an easy one when trying to follow all the rules and regulations while trying to add some good old common sense. I feel it's appropriate to recognize the applicant and my neighbor, Scott Nicholson, and his family. I have worked with them for many years as an ecologist and rangeland management specialist for the BLM. I can say firsthand knowledge that the Nicholsons are good stewards of public lands and are willing to make hard decisions that would favor the natural resource when necessary. I have coached the Nicholson boys in football and have watched them grow along with my sons and believe that the backbone of our great nation rests where family-owned businesses. This being said, it is still very clear that the findings of facts and conclusions of law completed previously still apply. In accordance with the May staff report, page 3, there is no way to do an analysis on potential impacts without a revised specific site plan. This information was not provided for review and consideration by those who will be impacted. In the order given to deny the application and in accordance with the Idaho Code 4 distinct areas that include noise, dust, large vehicle use, and impacts to property values were addressed. The order stated that in order to approve this action that has been denied, the applicant must demonstrate in each of these 4 areas the use of properties will not be negatively impacted or that the action will not negatively change the impact of the area. How can we look at this to determine anything at all without a revised site plan in order not to be able to consider proposed changes? The May 29th staff report clearly states that commissioners found use incompatible with the area. I also read that the commissioners found the road to be narrow and windy and that the staff thinks that reduced driving routes and hours may possibly mitigate this. I propose that due to the nature of the road, mitigation is limited and that 10 truck trips equates to 20 gravel trucks passing the private driveways 6 days a week, not including all of the increased traffic due to workers, service trucks, etc. There is no revised site plan or project narrative. I do not see how a gravel pit conditional use permit will at any level can be considered without key information being made available to consider how impacts will affect many of the variables. There is no way to consider historic resources and floodplain as there is not a revised site plan to address specifics. Just reducing the overall amount of acreage and duration of the permit does not diminish the impacts to prevent harm to property owners' use, enjoyment, and value of the property because of the area of impact. The actual area mined at any given point in time remains the same. The only change would be to the area that is left as holes when the project is done. It will still be the same rock pressure, same dust, same noise, same impacts to property values. It will still be a gravel pit in an area that has already been clearly denied by you. This revised application is still an application for a 5-year, 40-acre gravel pit to be utilized in the same location with the same reasons for denial that have been well documented and written on the record as outlined in Exhibit 2C. No matter how you try to paint it, a commercial gravel pit and crushing operation sending gravel trucks along Map Rock Road does not belong. Reducing the acreage and duration and implementing mitigation will not change the fact that there are places not suited for a commercial gravel pit of any kind. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Van Beek. Josh Davis, you can have your rebuttal at this time.
Jen, he's got to be 2,500. Oh, damn, what the hell it was. No, what the hell
You are on that, whoever you are that's talking, your voices are on that public record. So I would remind you to mute yourself if you're not Josh Davis.
I don't know what the blank that was.
Sound like
Josh still there?
Josh Davis, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
We can hear you now.
Okay, I apologize for that.
Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna first address the continued notions where Mr. Dale Gray's qualifications continue to be discredited, and I simply want to point out, and Mr. Gray unfortunately isn't here to defend himself, but he did in the previous hearing, and I want to point out that it's hardly fair to discredit a person's qualifications because they may not be listed on Google correctly or in the phone book correctly. And I want to point out that rather, there's no such thing as a licensed archaeologist. the correct term is a qualified archaeologist who meets the Secretary of Interior standards. I just want to make that very clear. And in regards to some questions about the Rippey Island project, Nate has indicated the project has been postponed. The project has not been awarded to Granite. However, for all intents and purposes, the purpose of this gravel pit, as I've previously stated, is to allow us the ability to provide gravel to this site at the closest location, which in turn increases the likelihood of us getting the project. If the project doesn't occur, then necessarily, and if there's no projects in the area, then there's not going to be a demand to sell the gravel. And if there's not a demand to extract and process the gravel, then there's no impacts. I do want to point out, and I'm just going to go back to the facts that, and correct me if I'm using the wrong terminology here, but in the ordinances, Canyon County ordinances, we are not required to provide an archaeological study until prior to the work commencing. That being said, as it was a contentious point through the earlier hearings on this application, we engaged with a qualified firm to do this study, to have that information to provide to staff, to the public, and to the commissioners, to have facts to discuss. And unfortunately, due to the timing, we weren't able to get a complete final document. However, the information, the determinations in there are correct, and they're factual, and they're honest, and they're independent. And we really tried to help to get that information in a timely manner, even though we weren't required to, so that we could try to get answers to a lot of the questions that were out there. In regards to the site plan, in the narrative, the operations narrative isn't changing. As I previously stated, we've just drastically reduced the durations and the scale of the project. We are still required to mitigate items such as fugitive dust. We are still required to meet the requirements set forth by the numerous governing agencies that oversee gravel extractions, and that is, Department of Environmental Quality, the Environmental Protection Agency, Mining Safety Health Administration. We have to file a notice of intent with the EPA to disturb the ground, and in turn, they have to approve a stormwater pollution prevention plan. All of those items still have to be addressed, regardless of whether you're extracting material from 2 acres or 200. And so none of that has changed. We are still required to meet the numerous standards set forth by those multiple governing agencies. And the same goes for the reclamation plan. The Idaho Department of Lands approved our reclamation plan for the original 180 acres. Annually, you have to submit to the Department of Lands the amount of acres disturbed, and they adjust the monetary amount set forth via a bond, which is obligated to, you have to provide a bond to ensure that you are going to reclaim the site in accordance with the reclamation plan. Again, those same standards are going to be in place, whether it's the 35.9 acre pond or the 4.1 acre secondary pond. None of that has changed. As I stated, we just drastically reduced the size, and we drastically reduced the duration of this project. I do want to point out that there's been a lot of discussion about subsurface artifacts, resources, cultural significance, et cetera. And I do understand that. But I also understand that that can take place anywhere along Map Rock Road. That could take place at the recent subdivision that was built to the west of this site. When they excavated for the home foundations, when they excavated for the roadways, did they do subsurface investigations? I doubt it.
Josh, excuse me, I don't mean to rush you, but you do need to wrap up.
Okay. I'll stand for questions.
Any question?
There was one question I wanted to ask, and I think, Josh, you might be the right person to ask this. Mark McDonough, in his letter that he submitted, had a question about the water rights and the water that would be used to supply water to the ponds upon a reclamation. Do you have information on that?
I do. So due to the high water table, at a depth of approximately 5 feet, you are into stagnant water. And so that's part of the requirement of the reclamation plan, is that you have to have approval from the Idaho Department of Water Resources indicating that you are not, that you have the rights to the subsurface water. But where it's stagnant water, where we don't have water coming into the ponds or exiting the ponds, that doesn't pertain to this.
But my understanding is, I think I remember this from the first hearing, the previous hearing, was that there would be flow, because you can't just have stagnant water. It'd be a mess. You'd have to have some sort of movement of water. Can you address that just briefly? It's really, to me, it's a little bit of a relevant point. But.
Well, I know there was discussions about the excavation of the ponds. You have to pump the water out, and that water would be pumped to a settling pond to allow the fines to settle out, and then that water would be utilized for irrigation purposes on Mr. Nicholson's property. But these
ponds, but Josh, these ponds upon reclamation, would they be used for irrigation, or would water be moving in and out of them? That's my question, is how do they, what's the plan to not let them just stagnate there? Do you know?
Well, I suppose that we could allow irrigation water to flow through them. The intent of having a pond that was designed to the depth of 30 feet, which is what we proposed, is so that you don't get, the water is cool enough in the bottom, you don't get moss, you're not creating a mosquito trap. I can show you some beautiful ponds I've dug that have no water flowing in and out of them at some of our other gravel pits. But that's why we make them deeper.
Okay, all right. I think that adequately answers my question. The water rights are there. You would not be stealing water from anybody else.
That is absolutely correct.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Van Beek.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I thought that's where the Commissioner Dale was going with this, that we do have a letter for the record. It's Exhibit 6B. And so there's nothing from Mr. McDonough on his water right. And I don't know if this is governed by a ditch rider or what happens out there, but the weir where that water is supposedly used to irrigate crops. There is some crop irrigation going on down there and some dispute with the use of that water. There's been a water right that's provided. I'm not a water attorney. That's outside of my pay grade. But I guess there's another question where we would want to know if there's been resolution. So Commissioner Dale's question, I appreciate that is a big deal. And as the mayor always says, whiskey's for drinking, water's for fighting. So there's another unresolved issue maybe that we need to.
Well, and I just want to clarify. My question was regarding the water in the ponds. I was not referring back to any ongoing dispute. That's really not part of this discussion. So I just wanted to know where the water in the ponds was, and that was it. So,
thank you.
Thanks.
The only thing that I wanted to say that it was referenced in the opening statement that the revised site plan, and that is part of the record. The revised revised site plan,
Right.
Exhibit 20, so it was part of
Thank
the
you,
record, so I just wanted to reference that.
I appreciate that.
So, okay. Any other questions?
I have no more questions.
And there's no one else signed up to speak, so I will just,
I'll make that motion that we close public comment.
Second.
moved and seconded to close public comment. All in favor? Aye. Okay,
Madam Chair,
yes.
I'm going to attempt, and I know Mr. Dale's got comments, we've got comments, but really, this application for me has become a very moot point. And I was deliberate in asking my questions to our Parks Director about the most valued commodity in this, and it is time. And in the interest of time, and which we've been granted now because we know that the RIPI project is no longer on the table with Idaho Power. This project, the bid has not been awarded to any specific, there's no reason to move forward to disturb a culturally rich area with any extraction at any time. Because of what's contained there, we have the ability to wait, to look at the scenic byway. That would be something that I would consider making a part of the county's record with our director's input. We have the ability to look at what a district for this area would look like to protect it. It is unique and unusual from other parcels because of the antiquity, because of the spiritual nature, because of the protection that needs to be afforded by the Indian tribes in that area and things that predate all of us. And I think while I appreciate the suggestion to reduce this really is the precedent that will open the door, and there is testimony, which I believe is credible, that it will be an ongoing renewal process in that Map Rock area, which if we look at what we're supposed to evaluate on the findings of facts and conclusions of law, it will forever change the area to have gravel trucks running. I don't care if they haul 1 yard, 30 yards, any yard. It's going to change the cultural heritage and the scenic byway, or whatever they weight that or not. In my evaluation in this quasi-judicial proceeding, I have found Josh Davis's testimony less credible than the testimony provided by Nathaniel Seal, Nikki Schwind, the Indian tribes, Mr. Hewitt, this archaeology, whatever it is. We have credible experts, and I'm not going to discount the testimony that's been given that I think is very credible, and put more weight in a report that by all intents and purposes is substandard. So I am not in favor of this. I want to, I think that's the right way to say it, Zach, that I would want to uphold. How do we say that? Because it's so convoluted.
You would grant the appeal and, yes, you would grant the appeal and deny the conditional.
Okay, then Madam Chair, that's my recommendation, that we grant the appeal and deny the conditional use application. There is no reason any longer to deny it. The RIPI project is off the table, and to mine for any other reasons in a remote site that's culturally rich is against our comprehensive plan. It violates our tribe, and I am strongly opposed.
Thank you, Commissioner Van Beek.
Madam Chair, I am going to make several comments. I want to say from the very start that I have been extremely interested in this project and this whole thing for a number of reasons. There have been some comments made on all parts here that I'm just going to correct. I'm not really convinced that I'm ready to approve this project. I think there's more groundwork that should be done before this moves forward. That being said, I'm not opposed to it down the road, because if you look at the pros and the cons of taking gravel out of this for the RIPI project, as opposed to lots and lots of trucks coming from somewhere else using Map Rock Road and highway, I always get it mixed up. Is that 45? 74, please. It's on the other side of the river. Well, no, I'm talking about the one. Right. Yeah. So I get those numbers mixed up, but arguably, it's better for our road system. It's better for everything else to keep as many trucks off the road as we can, and this would do that. And I just want to correct one thing. The Ripley project is not dead. It's just been postponed for a year. And I think that's a very important distinction. I appreciated Josh's comment that, hey, you know what, if there is no Ripley project and this gravel is only for the Ripley project, then there is no excavation. And I understand the bidding process. I've been involved in this for many, many years. And if you're going to make a bid based on the availability of nearby gravel, in order to make that bid, you have to have that already lined up to be able to get that gravel. And so that's why it is important for granite excavation, in my opinion. That's why it is relevant for them to move forward with asking for permission to get gravel from there, because it would totally make a huge difference in the whole bid process. Okay, that being said, and I've already stated I'm not really ready to move forward on this. There's a couple of things that I want to, and the letter from Dan Woodruff had some good points, but I just want to say that, and I understand Commissioner White's, there is that one section is sort of underlying maybe an implied threat that there could be a lawsuit and stuff, but I've not felt any strong arm tactics from Granite or anybody else on this. I've not had any conversations with any of the applicants or any of the other people opposed to it either. I've not felt that my arm's been bent on this whatsoever. I wrote some comments here, some notes on the folks who supplied letters, and I really appreciate that. I just want to express that is a very important part of this process. And for those of you, if you're still listening, who supplied letters, I want to assure you that those letters get read and that they do influence the decision-making process. So thank you very much. And it's not necessary always to speak. Written comments are just as weighty in my estimation. Pardon me, Madam Chair. I'm sorry, I'm taking more time than I normally do, but there are just some issues I think that needed to be cited here. The Bradfords, I really appreciate their letter. There is an impact on quality of life, and I think that needs to be addressed and needs to be considered on this part of this thing here. I think I addressed Mark McDonough's. And Michaela Jones, I thought made an interesting comment in her letter. She said that there's many of the people out there who would perhaps not be opposed if there was an ironclad agreement to only allow this gravel to be used on the Ripley project. And I thought that was significant. And I think if there's another application that comes forward on this, I would personally want to see, as I've stated before, I think in the previous hearing, that if it's specifically for the Idaho project, Idaho Power project right there, I think the impact on the roadways and everybody else is minimal. And that's the only way I would consider this into the future. Anyway, I appreciated that from Michaela. Everybody else is still opposed, and I've already made a comment on the tribes. I appreciate the tribes. I grew up on a cattle ranch that's right in the middle of a whole bunch of Indian reservations, and I've lived and worked with Native Americans all my life, and I appreciate their heritage. I appreciate their culture and all the things that are important to that. I do understand that on a first-hand, first-person basis, and I appreciate those comments that we had on there on the record. That being said, and I appreciate Nikki's expertise in archaeology, and she knows how much I admire her, appreciate her. But there again, it's nearly impossible in a lot of situations to prove that something is not there or that something is not going to happen. That's one of those statements that's really difficult to quantify. I really believe, yeah, there may be something 18 feet down below the surface, but and maybe the Nicholsons would sell their property to somebody who wants to pay a fair market value and preserve it for archaeological digs and that kind of stuff. But that if that was not present, then I see no scenario where they would voluntarily stop farming and making income off that property in order to start digging up all their farm ground to see if there's anything down there 18 feet. That's not gonna happen. And so in some ways that argument for me, I got to weigh the relevance of that as far as the reality of, is anybody going to dig 18 feet down on that property that's been farmed for decades and decades? Probably not. So I don't know what's down there. There's no evidence that there is anything down there, but there could be because of the area. I understand. I get that. And Madam Chair, I just make one other thing is regarding the what ifs. One of the things that we have to do as commissioners and land use decision makers is weigh the facts as we see them today. Often people will bring up, well, what if? That's also very difficult to look into the future. You try to look into it and say that if this was a 5-year conditional use permit, that's what it is. I can't bind what future boards would do. If this came back and was approved in the next 6.5 months as a 5-year plan, in my mind, that's what it is. Could they come back and apply for a future expansion? Yeah, that would be up to a different board because I won't be here then. So I understand that. Hard to close the door once the door's open. I get that. But again, there's nothing that says, even if this is denied totally today or in some future time, a year from now, they could come back with another proposal and maybe the board would make a decision. So the decision made today, if it's to deny this, which I've stated that I'm not ready to move forward on it, but it sounds like it might go that direction. It doesn't mean that forever it's never going to happen. I just want to make that clear. So anyway, those are my comments, and I appreciate the opportunity to ramble on for a little bit here. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Dale. I just for the commissioner seat that I occupy, I just want to say that I appreciated the loyalty that Josh Davis had for the archaeologist or the gentleman, was it Mr. Gray, I believe, that did the study. And I want you to know I'm sitting here in this room and there was no one meant to impugn his integrity or his knowledge or anything. I think it was the information was inaccurately submitted and kind of he ran 2 studies maybe together, Josh. So I have great respect. I have no information, no knowledge about archaeology and finds and stuff like that. I mean, once in a beach I found a ring, but that's as far as my archaeology successes go. So, and I think that I'm also not going to go to your expertise in the gravel and sand and the business that you do and what you supply for so many contractors and different projects around. And that's another thing. I don't understand gravel or the sand or the crushing. And I mean, you guys taught me what riprap is, so I learned something there. And it's not, a lot of this suddenly became very personal, and I don't want anybody this is just Pam White speaking, but I don't want anybody to feel like their integrity is not being challenged or questioned by me. And this is a difficult decision to make. And I really appreciate the fact, and you guys used the word compromise that you brought back. And indeed it was. And I will tell you, we have had a couple of times or that we've had individuals come back with compromise. And, you know, their compromise, you guys went above and beyond. I thought that it was from 140 acres down to 40. That's a there were huge compromises made here. It was suggested that we do have revised site plan for this project, and I appreciate that. There are some other ones that we do have an option to request from you to make a thorough decision, once and for all decision on this, and that would be let's see, where's it at? I'm going to find the exact wording of it. Staff report. I think it's the, give me some time here, I'm sorry. I should have had this ready as long as Commissioner Dale talks. Maybe I'm looking for staff's recommendation.
Yeah, I was trying to find that too. There's those three options, right? What is that?
Thank you. That's exactly what I'm looking for. And we do have the revised site plan, and you did submit a reclamation plan, but I don't think it was, you referenced it somewhat, and I believe you said that it should work. It would be really nice if it would be specific to the acreage that you are planning to use. A project narrative, because the fact that you there were some things that came out in testimony that I think can be clarified and you could speak to in a project narrative. And it also says an updated archaeological survey, and that would be another one that you could, another suggestion, if we wait to get to do this, Commissioner Dale said he wasn't quite ready to, and I would appreciate, this would just give me the thorough information to, because I did vote against this the last time, but this is a whole new day and a whole new, this is a new case. And I do understand at the end of the day, it's a gravel, there's still going to be gravel and that sort of a thing. But I recognize the compromise that you have proposed on this. And I think that some of these things, an updated archaeological survey would, it would kind of take care of the combined misinformation that we got. And I apologize for that. But those are some things, that's another option for the board to consider. So I guess I would ask them. I would say, would you consider, are we ready for a complete decision right now? Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you for your comments. And I want to say how much I appreciate that you have said in a good way that these decisions are not personal decisions. They're many times hotly debated, but it's not personal. It is a decision that we are charged with making in this kind of a setting. And so thank you for that. I also appreciate the fact that given the magnitude of change and that time is now on the side of a lot of people, that I'm going to make another pitch for upholding the appeal, denying the CUP, because in the interest of a clean break and coming back, and that whether it's a year or 5 years, it provides an opportunity for the requested information that you outlined there to be developed, which I think will benefit our parks and support the comprehensive plan within the county. The question that I had for Mr. Seal, which I wish I had asked, but I had a number of sequence there, is in that RIPI project that, you know, we're looking at one side of the river. It's going to have to get there somehow to that project. And that is a question I would be interested in knowing is, does the other side of the Snake River contain the same kind of archaeological relevance that this side does? And if the answer is no, that's a whole different animal. We don't even have to consider disturbing this or the residents. We could take that from a different angle. So that also needs to be carefully considered in that we're only looking at one side, but the other side of the river is a possibility, and that needs to be explored.
I might be able to clarify that a little bit up for you, and I'll go back to something that Nikki said. The other side of the river is Gibbons Hot Springs. And it's much, much more likely that you're going to find the archaeological remains over on that side of the river because it's a balancing, but I would say it's more likely to find it over the river because that's the side of the river that Gibbons Hot Springs is on, and the proximity to Rippey Island. In that area, there's a lot more sand. I don't know what the underlying soil is, but it's different than the north side of the river there. And just given on what you said, I'd say that it's at least as likely and probably more likely that given its proximity to the hot springs that there's
and I appreciate
evidence over there.
Commissioner Dale, I wasn't necessarily talking about excavating close to there. I was talking about somewhere farther off site that where that kind of cultural disturbance would not occur. That's an area that really we don't know. I appreciate and I understand that Gibbons is on the opposite side. I was talking about maybe west of that. So that's really what my thoughts were. So again, I'm going to make a motion. I move that we uphold the appeal and deny the conditional use permit because project is on hold. There's requested information. It's the board's prerogative to request, and the information is incomplete.
You know, I'll second that with some discussion. So that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Moved and seconded to deny. Because what was the last thing you said, Commissioner Van Beek? Because there's information that we're still.
Yes.
And that would be the reason I would like to continue the discussion so that we would have the opportunity to get the things that I listed.
Right. Do you have, and I was looking for, I couldn't find it.
It's right here.
The options
And
that were suggested. Could I?
Those things that I said,
yeah, okay.
right there, underlined at the bottom.
And Madam Chair, I heard you also say in there, your question was very directed that if this were a project that were specific to that, and we know there may be other options, that would look totally different than what we're considering today. And so I am all about, I'm the detail freak. I would want a clean break, and I would want the opportunity not to continue because we've closed the public testimony. I appreciate you letting me make my comments. I really didn't like how unclean this felt to me personally in not upholding that position that we took as a board for reasons that were beyond anybody's control. But again, I appreciate that you want the requested information. I think a new application, there's a lot of history here now, and we would have a different. So I'm still moving to uphold the appeal, deny the request, and consider a different appeal. It's going to look different.
And Madam Chair, the discussion I would like to offer is I think this is a good, and I guess the question would be to either Tricia or to Zach. Zach is in the room. Maybe I'm going to put him on the spot. What would that look like if we just said we're just going to delay a decision and ask the applicant for these different items of information? What would that look like? I don't think I can remember doing that in the past.
And if I could add on to that, I would like to know, to address Commissioner Van Beek the same. If we deny it now and they start or we want a clean break, however, I'm not wording it like you did, Commissioner Van Beek and I, but a clean break, what does that equate to in new expenses for granite? That's something else that I want to take into consideration.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Dale, Van Beek, I think I would ask that Monica turn on the mics for Director Nilsson and Planner Lister so they can also provide some input here. There's two questions there that I'll start responding to while we get them on the line. The first one is what is the board's authority to request additional information? There is some studies and information the board can conduct, can request according to state law and the board's ordinance. And these generally sound like they're within the realm of that. That might be also a good question to pose to the applicant. whether or not they want to proceed with going to those lengths on this application, particularly the going back to the Department of Lands. That's different than a study. That's having them go through another government process. So that would maybe be outside of what we typically ask. But asking for a archaeological study or something like that, that's the realm. The second question is, what would this look like? What would the additional expense be if this had to go back through
With zero interest and
process
zero
again?
payments
And
for 90
that would
days,
mean
you have zero
a
excuses
new
to not have.
application fee. It would be a new planning and zoning hearing. It would be a new. We also recall that Mr. Woodruff paid an appeal fee. It would require a new appeal fee if planning and zoning approved again. So yes, there's those expenses are going to reoccur if you have to go back through the process again.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sure if one thing, in your proposal, and I'm still anchored where I'm at, but on that archaeological study, I think that it's relevant to require, if that's what we want to do, and I've heard that that's legally within our jurisdiction, that an archaeologist, a recognized archaeologist, would be a person that would complete that study. And sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, sometimes you get rained out, and if it doesn't work, sometimes that's just the cost of doing business. Had an applicant pay a reconsideration fee, so he knew there was a cost to that, and that this whole game changed the whole application. If it's next summer, we don't know. I don't want to leave something in suspense for that long. I think that doesn't feel right, where we've already closed testimony. Had we opted to leave that open, that would be one thing, but we are going to be receiving new and additional information that would take a look at something that potentially was just limited to that length of time of 2 years, that project site. That's what I heard potentially, and that is very, very different than what we're looking at. So a new application is still here.
Oh, I guess I will take our legal advice and ask the applicant.
Which one, Davis or Leonard?
I'm sorry?
Probably Davis.
And probably Davis, Josh Davis.
And Madam Chairman, I've already closed public testimony, so.
Yes. Mr. Van Beek, I think the issue is not one of taking additional testimony into the record, but the question is their willingness to provide this additional information.
But if the board, as the quasi-judicial factor in this, if that's what they decide to require, I don't understand why that's negotiable. Because what we're asking for is information that's relating to a culturally rich area. And I guess I object to some level to, it's like a kid asking their mom, can I have candy and as much as I want? I mean, we're still in control of this area and what we want to see in this area because of the area.
I definitely want some of that candy. It's been a long hearing.
Yeah, I didn't get that myself.
Mr. Van Beek, I think it is within the realm of the majority of the board to seek additional clarification on that issue about whether that information would be willing to be supplied. Because the question then becomes, if they're not willing to provide the additional information, then the board can rest today on the hearing and not go forward. If they're not willing to provide the additional information, then you know that the record is closed.
Thank you for the clarification.
Okay. Josh, you heard about the additional studies, the additional, some of it might be in duplication to you, but nonetheless, if we were to continue this discussion, you did submit the revised site plan. the reclamation plan, a project narrative, and an updated archaeological survey. Where are you as the applicant? Where do you stand on if that were a request, a yes or no?
Yes.
So, okay. So you would, yeah, it is. So that's what I want. I want to make, this is a huge decision, and it's got so many parts to it. And the requested up-to-date studies directly for the property that is suggested and requested, it gives me the information I need to make a thorough decision.
And Madam Chair, Josh, I appreciate your willingness to do that. And I would just say, again, for all the folks listening out there and wanting for nothing to happen out here, our decision today or into the future has to be on what's best for all people. And one of the things that has not really been brought up here that is really important to me are the private property rights of the Nicholsons. They do have a right to do on their property what is allowed by the county, and the conditional use permit does allow gravel excavation. What I had said earlier, I'll stand by. I'm not ready to move ahead with approving the application today, and I'm tending to agree with Commissioner White on taking some time to request some updated updated plan for the reclamation, and also maybe a little more in-depth archaeological study that would be more complete and not just a draft. I think that would be fair both to Mr. Gray and to everybody else, so that we see something that's a completed study, not just a draft. The draft is always going to be having mistakes in it and stuff like that. And again, I just want to tell both Granite Excavation and the people who are listening who are opposed to this, just because we're asking for this additional information and it comes back, it doesn't mean it's guaranteed it's going to pass. Maybe the information comes back and it doesn't satisfy enough mitigation of the concerns. And what I look for in all of these kind of decisions is to be the judge in the middle and say, okay, let's try to mitigate as many of these concerns as we can and still allow progress to move forward on whatever it is that they want to do.
And
that's where I'm at.
And I need to, it's very important to me to justify, if somebody walks up to me in Albertsons or whatever, that I can factually justify a decision. And I still have some questions. So, and the requested studies will give me some direction that I need.
Madam Chair, I'm not in support, but having said that, if that's the direction that you're going, I'm going to restate my position that an archaeologist that's independent would complete that proposal, and that there would be some kind of an injunction that would allow our staff at least the year that's been indicated by an Idaho Power employee to allow us the needed time to look at that district, to look at the other factors and we have not engaged the tribes at all. That we've got a letter from them, but there has been no engagement that they've asked for. So I still think the cleanest way to do this, to get the information and have it submitted with a new application at whatever time that moves forward. And I appreciate Commissioner Dale's comments. I've made that argument in several hearings this week. I think this is our 10th or 11th one. It's been a long week. But also what we look at in conjunction with private property rights is highest and best use of the land. And so in that, this is unusual because of the spiritual aspect, which has not, I don't know if there's a way to mitigate for that. the unusual nature of this is going to take, as our director has said, a careful look at what happens there so that we don't irreparably damage an area that is rich in cultural history and offend the Native Americans.
So we have a motion on the floor. So, okay, so we'll have to do an all in favor?
And Madam Chair, the motion that I had is to deny, uphold the appeal, deny the conditional use. That remains my motion.
Okay, and Commissioner Dale seconded it. So
Yeah, so we got to vote on it.
we're going to vote.
Fine.
Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Van Beek?
Yes.
Commissioner White?
No.
Commissioner Dale?
No.
Okay, so what I will just say to continue the discussion, but please follow up with the DSD department, and they will get you the direct information, and we listed the studies, further information that we want from you, and what are we looking at for time?
The time is up to them because they can't go forward without anything there. So
That's true.
I don't necessarily think we need to put any kind of time restriction on it. But I'd also recommend that Granite folks make contact with our historical preservation director, Nikki Schwind, who is here, and maybe she could give direction on the type of study that could.
They are.
No.
I would just say that might be a good contact to make.
That's some information.
That's my
Yes,
comment.
Madam Chair, I think it would be beneficial to have a formal motion to continue the hearing and to request that information, and then to also set it for a date certain. Those things you talk about require government agencies and professionals, and so setting this out for
6 months.
I don't know that 6 months is required, but maybe if we continue this for a status to see how long it'll take for them to get that information going, maybe set it out for a month, and then we'll see at that point where they're at.
And so many of the agencies and different people are still dealing in the COVID issue, and so there's a lot of things going on right now. So,
Madam Chair?
yes,
May I just ask our legal, so Zach, can you explain the process then where we close public testimony, how that works to continue? I just don't know.
Just make a motion to reopen the public testimony.
Okay, thank you.
Next question I have then, does this, we're going to continue with an effort to receive more information back from Granite Excavation. Does that mean it has to be a public hearing opened to receive information responding to the new information that Granite may generate?
Yes, we will have to do that at some point. But I think the point that Commissioner, that's been made by the board here, by Commissioners White and Commissioner Dale, is that this stuff may take more than a few weeks. So it might be good just to have a hard motion and then set it out for a status type conference so we know how long it'll take.
Okay. Then I'll make a motion that we continue this discussion with the request that we receive the information regarding a completed archaeological study, a completed site plan, and a completed reclamation plan along with a project narrative. And Madam Chair, if I could, I would also like to say that is specifically for using this gravel for the Idaho Power project directly adjacent to this property on Rippey Island.
Madam Chair.
With Commissioner Van Beek's suggestion.
Is there a second?
Yeah, and I wanted to ask if you could also include in your motion some type of weigh-in. This is Idaho Power's project, and it's interesting. It would be interesting where we're going to reopen the public testimony to get input from Idaho Power. I think that's relevant. It's their project. So
then the applicant, did you hear that, Josh? Mr. Davis, I mean?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So that would be something else then. The Commissioner Van Beek has requested that you also would have Idaho Power here to provide some information.
And I'll add that to the motion. I think that's a reasonable request.
Okay, I'll second. Okay, roll call vote.
Commissioner Van Beek? I'm not sure how I vote on this. I guess I'm going to consistently, I'm not in favor of moving forward with this particular application, so I'm going to vote no.
Commissioner White?
Yes.
Commissioner Dale?
Yes.
Okay.
So we were looking for a status update meeting, so about 30 minutes. Do you think that should cover it? Monday, June 22nd at 11 a.m.
Is Monday bad for you?
Let me do work.
Yeah, some people have to work, yeah. Is Friday good? Is Friday
nice? Yeah.
How about a Friday?
Friday would be nice.
How about Friday, June 12th, 2 weeks from today at 10 a.m.?
That should be enough time for them to, that's probably not enough time.
I don't think that's enough time.
Yeah.
Okay, so, and you want to stick to Fridays?
Well,
Yeah, are we with
Just for the Rippey Island project.
yes.
Yes.
well, we didn't.
That's what I requested on my
That's what you
motion.
requested.
Yeah, my motion included
Just for the Rippey
to
Island.
relate it to Rippey Island.
To continue, now, okay, well, then this commissioner wants to clarify that.
Okay,
Is that for the information we're seeking,
Yes.
or is that all we're going to approve?
no, it's for the motion that I stated was to receive all of this information relative to the Rippey Island project is how I stated the motion. So reclamation plan, project narrative, site plan related to the Rippey Island project.
And Mr. Chair, or Madam Chair, sorry, there should be clarification because in the applicant's email, I think there needs to be a decision made are you limiting the scope of that to just the Rippey Island project? Because if you're not, then you should include a scope that extends beyond that so the board has, and the residents in that area have transparency on what the intent for this project is.
Well, I think I've stated my position pretty clearly that the only way I would approve this is that it's directly related to the Rippey Island. I've said that last time and said it this time as well. And I think the motion is clear in that what my motion was, that we seek the information for the updated site plan, the reclamation plan, project narrative, and the archaeological study related to the gravel project that would be going to Rippey Island. That's pretty clear. I don't think we need anything else.
Thank you, Commissioner Dale. Madam Chair, the question that I asked Mr. Davis early on was, would you consider limiting this project? And the answer was no, and that's why it became a moot point.
Well, the other thing that was, and maybe you didn't recall this, was I asked early on in the letter if it was a deal breaker that the only thing that would be considered was Rippey Island, would you do that? And he said yes. So I got a yes from Josh that he would be willing to restrict it only to Rippey Island.
And his comments were that's a 2-year project, because the chair asked that question. So we're talking about a 2-year project limited to Rippey Island to procure this information. And if that's the motion, then I appreciate the clarification. Thank you.
There was no time limit of that. Yeah. That's getting we're getting way down deep here. So I think the motion that passed was good enough to get the information we need.
And we have a second.
Well, we already voted on it too.
So
it's passed.
It's passed.
Yeah.
So I hope that is the.
I think the information, the person who needs to understand clarity on the information is Josh Davis and the granite excavation point, because we're asking for this information from them. It's their responsibility to generate that information. If they do not, then the project will very likely die. So I think the motion that was approved was very comprehensive and adequate.
I don't know if we can speak to the lifespan of the project, but I will just say thank you, all of you that joined us on WebEx or on the telephone or sent us the emails. Thank you very, very much for participating in this. These are unusual times, and it's kind of an unusual way to conduct meetings, and I appreciate your patience, and I appreciate your courtesy, and I really, really appreciate you participating. And those of you who are here in person, thank you very much for taking the time to be here. And so, Monica.
Our discussion was going to center around the new date. So the new date, with wanting to stick to your desired Fridays, puts us at July 24th at 1:30.
Okay.
So it pushes that out another month, so 2 months roughly.
It's July 24th at 1:30. That is the date, Josh. And if you let Development Services know, this is the time of year when the commissioners we wear so many hats, and we have the taxes and Board of Equalization and budget and all of that kind of stuff. So it will be the 24th of July.
And again, that's just the status update.
Just a status update, yes.
Yeah.
1:30, just a status update, okay?
Not be a public hearing, not just be a status update.
And I got the yes from Josh. Okay. Okay, very good. Thank you. That will conclude this meeting.
Good job, Pam.
Again, thank you, Commissioners.
Yes,
See ya.
thank you.
You know,